White Walker theory iceberg. So like I said, or was trying to say, this is less going to be a list of theories and more a list of ideas or concepts that we need to build up in order to understand the White Walkers. So we're going to start with the very simplest observations about them and progress to like the more heady observations. And then at the end, I will put it all together for you and tell you what we need to do to solve the problem of the White Walkers, to end the new long night that's going to come, and, resolve the story. That's what I got. And yes, I think it has been retrograding. I'm not sure. There was some weird astrology stuff going on last week. So yeah, that's where we're going to go. We're going to get all the way to what are the others? What do they want? How do we take care of that? And I think then y'all be impressed. I do have some couple of bonus tin foils at the end that we'll get to just for the heck of it. But most of this stuff is like down the main line of thinking about who the others were. So I don't have like, I'm not going to explain to you who the Boltons are, because that's mostly tangential to this main story. You know, there's symbolism, I think, that complements stuff. But if you guys have any questions, if I'm missing anything, feel free to pipe in and, I will rope it in. I can talk about most anything. So, and real quick, I did get some PayPals in this morning. Very kind. From Fairuz, thank you. And I might not be saying the name right. And from Zach, thank you very much. You guys rock. So thanks a lot. Yeah, increase your playback speed to 2x to catch up if you're... Yeah, thanks, Carsnark. And if anyone that, if there's anyone out there that plans to watch most or all of the stream and wants to jot down the timestamps when we change topics, that'd be super dope. And then like email it to me or just leave it in a comment on the video. That would be sick because that way I can go and put the timestamps in. But yes, so first concept, guys, these are magical ice demons. And this is Magali Villanueva, of course. Very famous work of prologue artwork here is obviously Sir Waymar. This is one of the best pictures of the others. Shows you their anatomy. Shows you what they look like. So they are, first things we notice, they are, I mean, like when you open Game of Thrones, you don't know what's going on. You don't know how much magic is in the story. There's dead wildlings, then they disappear. And then, the climax of the chapter, obviously, comes with the White Walkers. So they seem to be made of ice. They bring the cold with them. We can see the wildlings die. It looks like they're frozen, but it's not really that cold. Like they make a big point of saying, it's not cold enough to die from frostbite. But then once the others come into the clearing, it's so cold that Waymark is remarking on it several times. And there's even like Roy Dotrice's reading of the prologue is exceptional. And there was one where he just finishes a monologue and it's just like, it was very cold. And it's just a simple sentence, but it's just like, dude, it is colder than cold out here. So clearly the ice magic is coming with the others. They're made of ice. That means they're magical beings. And they have blue star eyes, right? So these are the first things that we notice about them. And then, of course, Old Nan's tales come just a few chapters later, and that sort of tells us what it is that Waymar saw. The White Walkers, they came with the Long Night, the armies of the dead, and all this stuff. Eventually, the last hero comes into it, too. Oh, yeah. Sweet, delicious honey tea. Oh, that's good. So maybe one day we'll do like a loose theories iceberg. Well, we'll track down all the non-central stuff, like what the hell's going on with the Boltons and the Faceless Men and stuff like that. That might be a fun one. But so there we go. They're made of ice. They're ice demons. They're magical. So those exist in the story. And we see, obviously there's dragons. So we start to think about ice and fire, ice demons and dragons. Basic stuff. So the others obviously are Lords of the Dead. And this art is by Sigborn Peterson. We see the wildlings, they're dead and then they disappear. And by the time we get to the end of the chapter, we can assume the others had something to do with that. Then we see Waymar get whited and resurrected. And once again, Old Nan says that they, wake the dead, send the armies of the dead. So we know that they're necromancers in some sense. They're raising the dead. We'll get in, could it be that the North itself is raising the dead and then the others can control them? Do the others wiggle their fingers like Night King did? We don't know that yet. But it seems like they control the dead. And the dead are being animated with the same ice magic that animates the others because they have the same blue star eyes, right? So, again, we're just starting with the most simple ideas and building up an iceberg. Let me just fix my display. There we go. Oh, hang on. That wasn't good. It's 1 second, guys. I know it just went all crazy. Okay. Why did it do... Oh, man. I have to put this whole friggin' thing back together. 1 second. Good Lord. What a friggin' day. There we go. I had this all so nice before. All right, it's back together. We're cooking with gas in the grill. Okay, so they're the necromancers. They're controlling the dead. Old Nan says it. We see it. We'll talk about the Fist of the First Men, but... So, next thing we might observe about the others is that they are humanish. See, this does look nice. Give me some credit here. Hell of a start. Really, haven't had one of those in a while. It's like, reminds me of the Monty Python castle guy. Well, keeps building the castle, sank into the swamp. What happened to the fourth castle? Well, that one burned down, fell over, and then sank into the swamp. That's what that stream beginning was. But it looks beautiful. Isn't this nice? Got all the artwork, got the bullet points. Doing my best here. All right, so this art right here is by Didier Graffet. French name, obviously. One of my favorite A Song of Ice and Fire fan artists. You can see why. This is one of the best pictures of the other that exists. It looks ancient, strangely beautiful and inhuman, kind of like George talks about. You can see the ice armor. I wish I could get more of the sword on the screen, but I had to square crop it. But yeah, that sword is glowing with moonlight like it's supposed to. We got the dead horse. It's pretty sick. So the others are human-ish, meaning that they ride horses. They have armor. They have swords. So they're not, animalistic, right? They're not like raw, sort of just like spirit demons that don't have any sort of form, like a ghost. Like there is a ghost and spirit quality, but there's also a human-like quality. Not only do they have armor and swords, they have language. The TV show called it Scroth, if you recall. But it sounds like the cracking of ice on a winter lake when they talk. So they do have language. And they also have customs. So one of them challenges Waymar. They have a sword fight. The rest of them watch. Once Waymar is wounded, something changes. Then they all move in and murder him. So they didn't just swarm on Waymar as soon as he appeared. And you get the feeling like they'd probably been watching him in the woods for a while. So it's all very human-like, the way that the others act. And again, we'll get to the Fist of the First Men too in just a sec, because we learn a lot about the others at the Fist. So they are called the White Walkers of the Wood. We eventually learn. I think Sam says that in the second or third book. He's thinking to himself, oh, the White Walkers of the Wood. And right in the prologue, though, we get that sense. And this is John Piccaccio's artwork. George said this is the most book accurate other artwork. Of course, he said that years and years ago. There's been others since then. But this is what George considers to be very book accurate. So interesting that they almost look on fire. And remember, they say nothing burns like the cold. There is a burning quality to the ice magic in Ice and Fire. But nevertheless, a shadow emerged from the dark of the wood. Very famous line. It's the first appearance of the other. A shadow emerged from the dark of the wood. So you get these white shadows are moving in between the trees. And that word, emerging from the wood, like that's a line that has more meaning than you think at first. The dark of the wood. And it almost sounds like the id of the wood, like the dark part of the wood. And that's actually what he's trying to sort of imply. And on a more basic level, the whole prologue is Waymar invading the wood. Like his companions are like, we shouldn't go any further. And literally George writes the branches to be like grabbing at Waymar and pulling him back and tugging at his sword and his cloak. And they're talking about how dead the wood is. So all the signs are ominous. Like the first 9 pages is nothing but like, man, this is really creepy. Why are we doing this? And Waymar's just wanting to prove himself. So he's charging onward. And that sort of invasion of the woods against the signs leads to the confrontation with the others. So it almost seems like the others are defending the wood. Now, really important bit. I'm going to say wood a few times. Is in the next chapter. It's actually the 3rd chapter. So the first chapter is the prologue. Then we get the execution of Garrod, who's fled from the wall by Ned. 3rd chapter is in the Godswood. And that's where Catelyn's coming up to Ned in the Godswood. And there's a really interesting scene or line where she's like, they're talking about Mance Rayder and the wildlings, and then Kat's like, there's worse things than the wildlings north of the wall. And she turns and glances at the heart tree over her shoulder. She has to turn around to look at it, so it's very deliberate. And Ned's like, the others are long gone, just like the children of the forest. So it's like, why is Kat looking at, because she says there are darker things beyond the wall. She's talking about the others and looks at the weirwood tree. So why is that? There's other clues that the others and the weirwoods are generally associated in folklore. Lord Commander Mormont, as a warning, says, the dead walk and the trees have eyes again. And it's like, oh, the trees have eyes again. You're making it sound all creepy. Maybe he's not talking about green seers watching through the trees there, but like something having to do with the others, because he's mentioning that in the same breath as the dead walking. And then there's the descriptions of the others. They're described as silent watchers twice in the prologue. And then we flip right to that chapter with Kat and Ned. Same thing. Silent watcher. Same words are used to describe the weirwood. A silent, nameless, faceless gods. The others are nameless and faceless and twins to the first. So if you look at all the language about the weirwood and the others in chapter 1 and 3, or the prologue in chapter 2, or whatever it is, it's all the same stuff. Bone white is another one. So you really get the sense, like these white walkers of the wood, looks like they might have walked right out of the weirwoods. And that's, of course, where this is going. But I think the vibes are really heavy in the prologue about this. So in a general way, you should be associating the White Walkers and the weirwoods at some point on your first read, I feel like. So then the others, they are shadow beings. This is Justin Madden's artwork, very ethereal looking others. They're called white shadows and pale shadows over and over and over again. So we know they are shadows, they're ghosts. They're somewhat insubstantial is the point. They don't break the snow when they walk. Coldhands tells us that in like book 3. Tormund has this long description. He's like, they're shadows with teeth. How do you fight a mist? Can your sword cut cold? So it's really making them sound somewhat insubstantial. And it seems like maybe they can materialize and dematerialize at will. I'll get into that a little later too. Thank you, Eli. No question attached. And thank you, Brett. Asking about the progression of technology in Ice and Fire. I don't have a good answer why it wouldn't have progressed that long. I don't think there's really a reason. I just think it's the convenience of the story. Westeros is a little bit backwards compared to the rest of the world. Like, they're more advanced in Essos, but it's pretty off topic. Maybe I'll discuss that a different time. Oh, Cleo. So, and then the other thing is, Lightbringer is set up as this thing that can fight the others. And then we're going to talk in a minute about, but just like, you need magic weapons to fight the others because they're magic beings and because they're shadows. We saw Waymar's sword, it clanged against the ice sword a bunch of times before it broke. And the last hero's sword broke too against the cold of the others. So we're kind of like, okay, regular swords don't work. We don't even know if a regular sword would hurt their bodies if you could hit them with it. It's doubtful. Valyrian steel, probably. And Jon and Sam talk about this as, oh yeah, dragon steel, is that Valyrian steel? Maybe. But there's a million reasons to think why Valyrian steel could work. But Lightbringer is the main thing. Like Lightbringer, everyone believes Lightbringer is a weapon to fight the others. So this is all set up pretty quick. And then, of course, we see Sam kill another. And he does it with a piece of dragon glass. And I've got my dragon glass just in case. Just in case. And so, of course, we see that Sam, the dragon glass is completely effective. It undoes the magic spell that binds the other's body together. It melts into a puddle. We've nicknamed this other Sir Puddles because of that. And then left in the puddle is the dragon glass knife. It's super cold so that when he picks it up, he drops it right away. It's like misting with cold. He waits a second and then he can pick it up. So it seems like the dragon glass has absorbed some of that cold magic from the other and undone that spell. And it just melted in like 20 seconds. And interestingly, when it melts, you can see that it has bones. It has bone-white hands, and then it has bones as pale as milk glass, which then melt as well. It also has blue blood. So again, more human-like stuff, bones, blood. There's some human component to it, but it's at the same time, it's made entirely of ice. And so this magical weapon just melts it right into a puddle. Sir Puddles, rest in peace. So that's dragon glass. That for sure works. Valyrian steel seems like it should work. Dragon glass, Valyrian steel's made with dragon fire. It's a magical, indestructible weapon. Ice and fire. It's not one of those things you got to overthink. It probably works. We never got to see. Oh no, Jon did kill a White Walker on the show with Longclaw. We haven't seen that in the books, but it's coming. And then finally, Dawn, which might be Lightbringer, obviously seems like a weapon that might be able to kill the others. It's similar to Valyrian steel. It's magical. It glows. And then all the symbolism of it. Dawn is the sunrise. Did the sword Dawn end the long night? Well, it's named after a sunrise. Sword of the morning. All that stuff. And of course, you guys know the word Lightbringer is a Latin word. It's a translation of a Latin word, Lucifer, which applies to Venus. Venus is called the Lightbringer because as the morning star, rises in the morning just before the sun, kind of like a herald of the sun. So everything about dawn and its symbolism suggests that it has something to do with Lightbringer. So therefore, it could be a weapon that kills the others as well. It might have been the weapon of the last hero. Last hero's sword was made of dragon steel, and dawn is, of course, made from a comet or a meteorite. And meteors and comets can be called dragons, so maybe dawn was dragon steel. That's a very old fandom idea, predates me. Yeah, Dawnbringer, son of the morning is another translation of Lucifer. So Sword of the Morning is very similar, Son of the Morning. If there's any old dubstep heads, there's an old song, Lucifer, son of the morning, I'm gonna chase you out of earth. So one of those old Rastas knows their mythology. But anyway, I think that's Lofa. Okay, so yeah, Sword of the Morning. I've got more music references planned. The Last Hero. Like I said, the Last Hero may have wielded dawn. He had a dragon steel sword. That sounds magical. Maybe it was a Valyrian steel prototype from the Great Empire of the Dawn. Who knows? Maybe it was a sword made of dragon glass. That seems fragile, but might kill the others. So, what we know about the Last Hero is that he is associated with leading the first men of the Watch in the War for the Dawn to end the long night and defeat the others. We'll get into the origins of the Watch and what that means, but the Last Hero's story basically has a break in it. Old Nan gives us the beginning of it. He journeys north into the cold dead lands. This is during the long night. He's seeking out the children to see if they have magic to help humans win the battle. He's chased by the others. He has 12 companions, a horse and a dog that all die. And his sword breaks from the cold. So it really sounds like he's harried and hounded on the run. And then the story gets interrupted. And then they talk about Benjen. And they say, oh, Benjen's lost north of the wall. And Bran blurts out, the children will help him, just like they helped the Last Hero. So we know that the children somehow helped the Last Hero. And then later we hear a reference to a song, I believe, that refers to the Last Hero leading the Night's Watch in the War for the Dawn with Dragonsteel. So there's this gap. He's losing bad, broken sword, receives help from the children, and then he comes out on the other side, more powerful with the Night's Watch fighting the others. So that's what we know about the Last Hero. It obviously has a lot to do with the others and the long night and all that stuff. Of course, I'll get into what help I think the children gave the Last Hero. He's got the new sword, but the children aren't really known for forging swords. Maybe they added some magic and helped him fix it. You think of Narsil, the broken sword that was reforged in Lord of the Rings, of course. That's definitely part of the reference here. But I've got a specific theory about what the children did to help the Last Hero, which we'll get into. And now we come to the Fist of the First Men. Fist of the First Men. We learn a lot about the others here. And this is Jovan Delic. Oh, this one is Justin Sweet, by the way. And this one is Matt Olson art. Sorry, got behind on the artist. Matt Olson art, Justin Sweet, Last Hero. And this is Jovan Delic. This is an other riding a dead bear, which is pretty awesome. And he's got a sick glowing sword. So we learn that fire kills whites. So fire arrows do pretty well, but the whites are stubborn. They keep coming. It takes them a minute to burn. You can dismember them, but they kind of keep coming. Later we see that you can break their bones, and that stops them. But until their bones are broke, the skeletons are going to attack you. We see that the others are kind of like commanders. They seem to send the whites at the Fist all at once. We don't know how much the others were involved in the fight because Sam is... The only accounts we get of the Fist are Sam's scattered memories as he's fleeing. And he's thinking about the whites and the dead bear and all this stuff. And then he's like, and the others. And then he goes, oh, don't think of them. And he sort of cuts himself off. So we don't know how involved they were with that fight. But it's very clear that they sent the army of the dead. Because if the dead are just wandering around and they just wake up at night and kill people, then you'd get them sort of all over the place. But instead, they all came at once, like an army, moving under the cover of the trees, You know what I mean? So they also didn't come as soon as the sun set. It was later, I believe. So it seems pretty clear that the others are like commanders, and the whites are their army. So again, don't know exactly how the whites are raised, but clearly they're controlled by the others. The others also sort of waited for potentially the Night's Watch to get to a certain spot where they'd be easily surrounded. There may be magical enchantments going on with the fist. It's hard to say. There is one interesting line where it says the fist was a place that was haunted with the spirits of the first men. And then, like, who shows up but the others? So it makes you think, well, are the others like first men? Ancient first men? Or are they talking about, all the whites that come? Like, some of those whites might be hundreds of years old and stuff. Hard to say, but the fist, we could get into all kinds of weird theories about the fist. It's weird that it's considered a ring fort of the first men when it's so far north. It must predate the wall in that case. Because, of course, whenever the wall did go up, there were some first men trapped north of the wall. Those became the wildlings. I think a lot of people that are wildlings are descended from probably like criminals and people that have fled Westeros, fled the wall. But definitely some people were north of the wall when the wall got built and just chose to live up there. So, hard to say what's up with the fist, but I have always raised an eyebrow at it. It seems weird that it's a ring fort of the first men. I feel like there's more to it. But that's kind of neither here nor there. Kathleen, thank you. Could you talk about if the White Walkers come with the cold or if they bring it and how that affects the abnormal seasons? I've been thinking about this ever since I read that George said Planetos used to have normal seasons. Yeah, it did. And we're going to get the answer to why they're messed up too. I do think the others bring the cold with them. That's clear in the prologue. The cold follows the others. I do think that they can't invade Westeros until there's a long night, though, because they are like vampires. They only come out at night. So they need the sun to be hidden, good and hidden, to come out and really cause trouble. So that's in the sense that they come with the cold, meaning that they invade Westeros when the long night falls. They need that first. They don't, like on the show, they just started walking out and the clouds just followed them and blocked the sun wherever they went. That's not going to be it. The sun will actually be hidden. And that's when they'll be able to move out. But they do bring the cold with them. There's no question. Sam feels it too. The closer like he's inside the hut and all of a sudden it gets super duper cold and then he sees the walker. So like, yeah, they definitely bring the cold. Same in the prologue. Thank you, Kathleen. That was perfectly on topic. That's the skillful way to do the PayPal or Super Chat question. Nicely done. So yeah, the others use strategy. And that's important to realize. Like, they're not mindless. They're clever. In the prologue, once you see the strategy at the fist, you look back at the prologue and you think, they were probably messing with the Night's Watch. They were probably following them in the woods, drawing them out, choosing when to confront them. They set this trap of the dead wildlings. They let them see the bodies, and then they made them disappear. So they're messing with the Night's Watch. You know what I mean? Why are they doing that? I have a theory. We'll get to that later. But they use strategy. It's important to observe that. They don't attack the Rangers until they choose to at the fist. And then they sort of pick them off, it says, as they flee the fist. And they're going back to Castle Black. The White Walkers aren't wiping them out, but they are picking off the stragglers. So it's sort of like they're herding them back to Craster's. And Craster's Keep, we're going to get to that, but, there's some deep theories about the Walkers and Craster's Keep and coordination and stuff like that. So, shout out Painkiller Jane. So, yeah. We'll get to Waymar. We will get to Waymar. I've got my own Waymar theories. All right, so next up is going to be The Wall. And this is by Pierre Santa Maria. Oh, look, it's the comment. So The Wall, first things we observe about it, it's said to stop the others, and the whites ostensibly seems to be more the purpose than keeping the wildlings out. But then we see Jafer and Othor, the two whited Night's Watch brothers, and they get carried back across the wall and then wake up on the other side. So that sort of makes us wonder, like, could they not have crossed on their own? I don't think so. I think they did have to be carried. Because later, Coldhands tells us that there are magical spells in the wall that no shadow can pass. And that's why he, as a dead person, cannot pass the wall. So that's pretty clear that whites can't pass the wall on their own. I guess you can literally pick them up and carry them, which is another strategy thing with the others. They left these two whited Night's Watch Rangers where they would find them, right near the Grove of Nine. Because remember, they found them when they went to go do Jon and Sam's oath at the Grove of Nine. So the White Walkers kind of tricked the Rangers into bringing the corpses back to Castle Black, and then woke them up and tried to kill the Lord Commander specifically. The whites went after the Lord Commander. So this is all strategy from the others. Right? Yeah, it's a great piece of art. Love this. Let me praise Garth 1 second. I'm going to have to get Cleo out pretty soon. She is having a day. Okay. So next, oh yes. So there's shadows in the wall. So, okay. The wall, big question about the wall is who built it? It's made of ice, and it's pretty obviously partly built with magic. Ygritte says it's made with blood. And Coldhands says there's spells set into it. And it's said that Bran the Builder is the one who built it with the children of the forest and giants. It's easy to picture giants, picking things up that are heavy. But obviously the children will be providing a more magical help. So Bran the Builder also was said to have, we'll get to him, but taken to a secret place and taught the language of the children. And that sounds like a euphemism for something having to do with magic, obviously. I don't know. It was literally just like teaching him bird song. Probably he learned music. So, no time-traveling Bran theories today. Do like that theory. We're not going to go there. Just going to talk about the characters as they appear. So, why was the wall built? Why build an ice wall to keep out ice demons? Well, probably because it's in the north, and if you want it to last a long time, it just has to be made out of ice. The main thing is the magic. The magic spells are the barrier, not the ice, really. However, we're going to get into the idea of who might have been able to use ice magic and build a wall that wasn't the others. But maybe the others built it. Maybe the wall, maybe the others don't want humans on their side of the wall, and maybe the wildlings aren't supposed to be there, or maybe the wildlings are kind of like sheep in a pen being farmed by the others. We'll get to that. But it could be that the others built the wall and don't want, like dragon lords or something on their side. The wall does seem to keep out dragons. We'll talk to Alice about Alysanne later, but since we're talking about it, it's well known that Alysanne tries to fly Silverwing past the wall 3 times, and says that never before had Silverwing refused her command, but 3 times refused to fly over the wall. So literally the wall either literally blocks, like there's an invisible force field, or the cold magic of the wall is so abhorrent to Silverwing that you just can't make her fly that close to it. It's one or the other. But clearly the dragon does not like the wall, or straight up cannot pass the wall. And it would kind of make sense if the others and the dragons are on equal footing as far as neither one of them can pass the wall until it comes down. It's like kind of like a curtain that drops so the fighters can fight. That kind of makes sense to me. And in the show, that was not the case, but in the books, that is obviously very different. So that is the wall. For now, we're going to come back to the wall. But again, we're going through like the most basic first wave of observations. The first time you read the book, maybe the second time. That's the level of stuff we're talking about here. Ryan Vine, at what point do they decide they're in the long night? Wouldn't they have to be in it for like 10 to 15 years before they can even start considering it? No. Think about this. If the sun didn't rise tomorrow, how would you feel? And if it didn't rise for another 2 or 3 days, how would you feel? And if it went on for about 2 weeks, how would you feel? Wouldn't take long. The sun doesn't rise even once, and people get pretty upset. You should see, animals, of course, don't like eclipses. It makes all the dogs howl. So people would panic right away. That's right. And also, I think the long night doesn't just fall, just sort of seep in. I think there's a dramatic trigger mechanism. I don't know if we could see it on screen anywhere. Something that could trigger a long night, but I think it begins with a boom and everyone notices. And then it gets dark and cold and the temperature drops. And yeah, the shit's going to go haywire pretty much all of a sudden. So they'll know. Do you think it would be fun, asks JB Duck, if the POV of the wall falling was from Old Town, not Castle Black atop the high tower, a horn being tooted from the top? And there is a line about being able to see the wall from the top of the high tower, which I think is a clue about magic. There's probably a glass candle up there. We know they have them at the Citadel. We know the high towers dabble in magic. It seems very Sauron or Saruman Palantir parallelish. So we should have a Palantir-like thing at the top of the high tower. That would be a glass candle. That's what I think it means when you can see to the wall from there. But the POV for the wall falling could be interesting. I mean, we've seen Bran have space POVs, basically, where he's flying over the land, almost like he was a comet, looking down over everything, or like he was looking out the moon's eyes or something. So we'll probably get a few different POVs on it. But I will talk about the wall falling. It's most closely tied to Jon, the fall of the wall. So we should expect it to be intricately connected with Jon's POV and potentially Jon's resurrection. All right. Should I go get Cleo? What do you think, chat? If you think I should go get Cleo, fill the chat with Cleo emojis. And if there's enough of them, maybe I'll go get her. We'll see how behind the chat is too. Okay, so next we have the Horn of Joramun. This art is by R. Valley, R-V-A-L-L-E. I modified this art. This is a horn that some guy made somewhere. I've got his name. I forget what it is, but this is like a photograph of somebody's horn that they made that looks very, very similar to the description of the fake Horn of Joramun, quote unquote, that Mance and Tormund have. I added the runes on there and I colored it gold. I basically took you see the runes on Tormund's arm cuffs? Those are first man runes. And supposedly the horn has golden bands with first man runes. So I literally copied the runes from his cuffs and photoshopped them onto the horn. I think it did a pretty good job. It looks pretty realistic. So that's all bullshit. Those bands were not on the horn. And they definitely did not have runes. So then I put it all together, put it in his hands. This is not a theory, but this is probably one of my best Ice and Fire photoshops. So, in any case, the Horn of Joramun is supposed to break the wall, also called the Horn of Winter. And there's one photo I didn't put in this presentation that I actually want to pull up and show you because it's so cool. And it's the only Horn of Winter picture that I have found. And you'll see why I love it. And then I'll go get Cleo. I don't know if that's enough emojis, though. I need to see more emojis to deal with that bird. This is by Ruby, R-U-B-I. And as you can see, it's a horned Night King blowing the horn. And he's got a icy sword with like ice fire on it. He's got blue eyes and horns. It's sick. This is sick. So we don't know what the deal is with the real Horn of Winter. Obviously, Sam found the little chipped one that Coldhands helped him find, probably outside the Fist of the First Men. You got to think Coldhands left that stuff there, right? Because it was packed recently. So Coldhands is really the only candidate. Him or Benjen. I guess it could be either. But yeah, the Horn of Winter / Horn of Joramun. It's said to bring down the wall. We don't know how it does that. They talk about waking giants in the earth. So now it all sounds like Jericho, where they blew horns and knocked down the walls of Jericho with very cool ancient Hebrew sound concussion magic or something. George has a lot of biblical influences in the book. The Horn of Joramun is clearly inspired by the horns that brought down the walls of Jericho. However, there's some other ideas that might have, associated with the horn. They talk about the horn that wakes the sleepers. So does it wake the dead in the crypts? Kind of like Aragorn's ghost army. It's the sleeping giants. The weirwoods are called pale giants frozen in time. So when you talk about waking giants in the earth, are those just the weirwood roots in the earth? Is that Hammer of the Waters earthquake stuff? Or is it waking spirits from the weirwoods? The weirwoods being the giants in the earth, waking the giants in the earth. Are the weirwoods going to wake up and start spitting out others? Or there's just so many wild things that the horn could do. And also there's a conflation between the Horn of Winter and Dragonbinder for two reasons. One, Dragonbinder looks exactly like this fake Horn of Winter that Melisandre burns. Almost exactly. They're both 6 to 8 feet long, twisted in black. Which, by the way, a horn that's 6 foot long doesn't belong to an oryx. I don't think. Somebody could tell me, but I think these are dragon horns. They kind of have to be, don't they? Great question, Bruno. I'm going to get to that topic exactly about Melisandre, a Night's Queen, and transforming into a being of magic. Great question, though. Thank you. And yeah, we're gonna do that exactly. By the way, how's the sound? I haven't seen anybody complaining about lag in a long time. Does that mean we're smooth and everything's good? That would be dope if so. Okay, so Dragonbinder, the one that Euron has, that he got from Valyria. It is a long black horn, and it has Valyrian steel bands and red gold. So red gold and Valyrian steel, and the Valyrian steel is incised with Valyrian glyphs. And then the Horn of Joramun, the big one, has old gold bands. So not Valyrian steel, but gold bands with First Man runes. So they sound very similar, very similar. Not only that, but when Dragonbinder is blown, those runes light up with white fire. And then, of course, the Horn of Joramun is burned in the pit. And so it lights up with fire too, and it seems like the runes are glowing. So it's not exactly the same thing, but it's like George giving us very similar language and symbolism. They both catch on fire. So, and if obviously then there's Sam's small horn, and this is where we think of Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade, where he's I think it's The Last Crusade. The one where he's trying to choose the Grail, and there's all those cups, and he finds the Grail Keeper, and he almost picks a fancy one, but then he picks the simple wooden cup because Jesus was a carpenter, and so it should be the simple one. And that was, oh, you chose wisely. And the guy that was dead chose poorly. So it's Last Crusade. Okay. So some people think these big fancy horns are the red herrings, the shiny objects. And really it's this old little chipped horn that Sam has. That's the important one. It's an undeniably attractive idea. I kind of hate it because I like the big shiny horns. I like fancy cups. Like this dragon mug that I have. He chose poorly. But I think, let me talk about Dragonbinder. So Dragonbinder, an old friend of mine pointed out that if dragons are comets, Dragonbinder might be Cometbinder. We've been trying to figure out, well, can you call comets, right? And I know I'm getting ahead in the thing, but you guys know I have a theory about comets and the long night and stuff. So maybe if one of these horns can call a comet, that's how it breaks the wall and causes a long night, or wakes giants in the earth, causes earthquakes. A meteor impact would do all that. So if Euron blows the horn just right, or if Dany blows it, or, we'll see if it calls a comet back. I have a feeling. There's a place on the Iron Islands called the Hammerhorn Keep. And the symbolism of that strongly implies that the Hammer of the Waters, which was a moon meteor, was called down by a horn. There's lots of clues, but that's a little off the track of the White Walker iceberg. The main thing I want to say is that we've got these magic horns floating around. We don't know which one does what. We don't know which ones are important, but we know that magic horns are a thing, and they're strongly associated with bringing down the wall, or maybe even worse stuff. So it's kind of weird that the Horn of Joramun is said to have brought down the wall when the wall's never been brought down. Like, it's there. Maybe it was broken a long time ago and fixed, but I misspoke. We've never heard that the wall was broken, just that the horn can break the wall. So it's like, well, how do we know that it can? It's weird. It's mixed up folktale stuff. So there's some truth here that's going to make sense of all this, but it's not exactly what people think. Mance did believe that it could break down the wall, though, or at least that he could scare people into thinking that, because he brought this big wall to try to intimidate the Watch into submitting and letting him through. He showed it to Jon. He's like, oh, I'm going to blow it in 3 days if you don't let us through. So, Colin, I will talk about all the Night Kings. I missed your question, but yes, we were going to get to the whole idea of does the Night King exist and how that could go. So yeah, that's definitely on here. It's pretty important stuff. So breaking the wall. We're going to come back to this, but horns seem like they're involved. And I guess it's time to go get Cleo. I also need to hit the restroom. So let me give you some music. I'll get Cleo. I'll be back in about 90 seconds. Guys, you will never believe this. What Cleo just had to go through. Come here, girl. It's okay. Goose was out of his cage. I didn't shut it all the way. He was on Cleo's cage, teasing her and egging her on. Wasn't he, girl? Was he upsetting you? Was he upsetting you? I'm sorry you had to endure that, girl. It's okay. It's okay. There you go. You want to give me in my lap? Okay. All right. Yeah, he's back in his cage now. That was my fault, actually. He was tormenting her, though. He was on his cage, on her cage, like fully egging her on. He's a dick bird. All right. So next up is Craster's Worship. I'm glad I took a break before this one. So this is Aransta Sesteo. She did one of the calendars. Well, I'm using a couple of her pieces, obviously. Incredible. Craster's Keep here. Craster's wives and daughters. They made sure to get a couple little girls in there so you realize how truly awful this is. But getting past the horror, let's talk about sort of the magical import of what's going on here. So this is a protection racket. Craster gives his sons, his boy children, his male children, to the others, as we learn. And the others do not trouble him. He talks about best get right with the gods and, oh, they won't trouble us here. And he's just in this little log cabin in the middle of the woods, and the whites and the others never come. So obviously they're leaving him alone. He's a godly man. That's right. Best get right with the gods. So this is a protection racket. This is a deal. He seems to have a pact or truce, or there's a way in which you can worship the others and they will leave you alone north of the wall. We also hear about on the frozen shore where people worship cold gods of snow and ice. And I don't know if there's different snow gods out there than the others. They're probably doing the same thing as Craster. So you start to get the idea that maybe Craster's not the only one who's ever done this. If the others like babies, then did they just start liking babies, or have they always liked babies? Like they probably do. And in fact, this is just changeling folklore. It's Irish folklore about, elves and changelings and elves and other naughty spirits that take the baby and they'll leave a changeling in place. So it's like not a natural baby, or sometimes they'll just take them. The She are associated with this. All kinds of fey creatures steal babies. The Squishers steal babies too. So the others definitely are in this tradition. They are taking the babies. And it's probably not just Craster. Now, Craster is... he's from White Tree Village. Now, White Tree... and Craster's... his parents are a Night's Watch Ranger and a woman from White Tree. A woman from White Tree Village. And White Tree Village, we've been there. It's got a huge weirwood tree. Huge. It covers the whole little village. It's giant. It's the one that's got the big mouth that has bones in it and fire scarring. So there's the bones of a child as well as a human skull in there. And it looks burnt. So we're getting clues about wildling traditions that may be a little different than anything we've seen in Westeros at White Tree. It's pretty important. They are sacrificing babies to the weirwood tree or something, right? They're burning the babies, or maybe they burnt out the mouth first to fire scar it, and then they put the dead children in there. We don't know where Craster leaves his male babies. Does he go out to a weirwood tree in the forest and put the baby in the mouth of the tree? Bran goes through the weirwood mouth at the Black Gate, and it's kind of like he is a child getting eaten by a weirwood tree. So there's, again, a baby's skull in the White Tree weirwood mouth. So yeah, on the show, Craster leaves the baby at like the foot of a tree. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was specifically a weirwood, or even if they were left in the weirwood mouths. I just thought of that this morning, by the way. That's a new theory. Step down, girl. I don't like this theory. I don't like it either. But I think it's important that Craster comes from White Tree, and White Tree is a village where we see babies given to the weirwoods, because Craster gives babies to the others. That's kind of the point I want to make. Also, a woman from White Tree, if you want to think about symbolism, weirwoods are the white trees, and White Tree Village is named after its weirwood. So a woman from White Tree becomes Craster's Knight's Queen. We're going to talk about Knight's King and Queen, of course, but we know Knight's King and Queen were caught sacrificing to the others. That's the same phraseology as Craster, which means they were giving children to the others, right? So Craster, he's giving his children to the others, so his wives kind of parallel Knight's Queen. It's interesting that, like, he's not just marrying different women to have babies. Like, he had one original wife, and then all his other wives are the daughters of that original couple, him and his first wife. So it's almost like he's doing a Valyrian incest thing to keep the bloodlines pure. So who is that woman that he married? And why does he only want her genetics for his children to give to the others? So there might be something important about that. And then if you just think about the sort of Knight's Queen archetypal figure, a woman from White Tree, you know, we're going to see the Knight's Queen figures are associated with the weirwood. They are women from White Trees. So that's sort of a meta clue about Knight's Queen there. All right. Thank you, Craster. It's been lovely to visit your house. Knight's King. Knight's King time. This is Oriana Webster's artwork of Knight's King. It's used a lot. It's particularly wonderful. So Knight's King, what's the basic story, right? He saw Knight's Queen north of the wall, a woman with cold blue skin as pale as the moon and eyes like blue stars, and he chased her and caught her and loved her, took her back to the Night Fort, declared himself a king and her a queen, and ruled for 13 years. And then he was thrown down by his brother, Brandon the Breaker Stark, and Joramun, the first king beyond the wall, or the first Joramun or something. And then later he was found to have been sacrificing to the others, which means, of course, that him and Knight's Queen were giving babies to the others or something. Except for that Knight's Queen is an other, so don't know if they're giving babies to the others or just making them straight out. We'll get to that. And then, of course, Knight's King is said to have bound his brothers to his will with strange sorceries. So basically, Knight's King and Knight's Queen are both implied as magical people. Knight's Queen is like a female other. She doesn't sound like a corpse. We'll talk about that. But she's definitely got the blue star eyes. That means magic. Her skin is, you know, supernaturally white. So this sounds like the skin of the others, which is bone pale. Then it says that Knight's King gave Knight's Queen his seed and soul. So this is some sort of a magical exchange of energy, almost like a succubus type of action from Knight's Queen, where she is taking something from Knight's Queen, but then they're producing children who are given to the others or are others or something. Then he's using strange sorceries. So it's like he's partnering with a magical woman, and you almost get the feeling like he became magical out of that. Or maybe his magic was altered or something. But they both end up magical. Knight's King is using strange sorceries on his brothers. He's up to par for Knight's Queen. She's a magical being, and he, you know, she was impressed with him. So that kind of implies he had something extra. So yeah, Knight's King and Queen, magical couple, sacrificing to the others, making others, doing something like that. They ruled for 13 years. Of course, you know, we'll get into my heresy about this, but I definitely believe Knight's King and Queen were original. They were the original creators of the others, and they ruled during the Long Night, which probably lasted for 13 years. I'll get into the proof for that, but I've believed that for years and years, and many other people in the fandom think that too, because this is the only story we're given for creating others is Knight's Queen. You know what I mean? She could be the origin of the others. So if you're going to say that there was something older than Knights King and Queen, you're just basically saying, well, there was a Knights King and Queen 100 years before that who did all the same shit. So I think it's, it says he was just a man by light of day, but the night was his to rule. So he's either a werewolf, where he turns magical at night and then back into a man in the morning, or he transformed himself magically by his union with Night's Queen. The long night falls, and now he is Night's King, who's no longer just a man. He is a sorcerer ruling over the long night for 13 years from the Night Fort until last hero can come and beat his ass or whatever. Something like that. But we'll get to some of that. So this is Night's Queen by Lyanna. Lyanna did 3 different versions of this Night's Queen artwork. I used this one, but I used them all in my videos about the others. They're all exceptional. A slightly fawn-like look to her, which is awesome. And here she's in the haunted forest with a dead horse. So as I mentioned, it does not sound like a corpse, really. She has skin as pale as the moon. The whites have skin that turns black at the extremities, and it's often green and gray and stuff. So her skin is glimmering white like the moon. That's more like an other. And Night's King loves her. He chases her and loves her and thinks she's beautiful. And that doesn't seem like something that you could do with a corpse. They also have children. That doesn't seem like something you could do with a corpse. So seems like more that she's some sort of icy witch or female other. And somebody clever figured out that corpse queen might mean queen of corpses, not herself being a corpse, but rather as Night's Queen, someone who can raise the dead and control the dead. So she's the queen of the dead, the corpse queen, the necromancer queen. This makes a lot more sense, and it's a fun twist. It makes the myth close, but not quite. And that's how all the legends are written by George. They're not wildly wrong, but they have some truth and some distortion. So, Queen of Corpses. Am I high on weed? No, I'm normal on weed. I have ADHD. Weed is what makes me normal. Speaking of which, praise Garth. By the way, I'll just take 30 seconds to talk about this. Weed does not necessarily help everybody with ADHD, but some people do. And particularly, it's the people that have a lot of racing thoughts. Cannabis can help slow that down and get you in a more meditative headspace, which is really good for doing things like making art and cleaning and stuff like that. If I was trying to be an accountant as someone with ADHD, then I would not use cannabis. That would not help me. I would probably be better off on either psychiatric meds or just like friggin' behavioral therapy to help me do accounting, because that's really hard for me. But to sort of help me, slow down the thoughts, and then also ADHD people have really weird biorhythms. It's hard to get to sleep sometimes. So obviously there's the sleepier cannabis out there that'll help you go to sleep. So helps me, not necessarily for everybody. Since I say it, that I use it for ADHD, I always want to throw out that disclaimer. Obviously, I'm not a doctor and can only speak from my own experience, but there you go. And there's a cool dude out there called Dr. K who's got really good ADHD videos. I'll try to share some of his stuff on social media, but yeah. Anyway, I do put out ADHD content on Instagram at David Lightbringer if you're curious about that stuff. And I also did a stream with Quinn where we both talked about our experience with ADHD. That's back on my channel somewhere. So next up. Oh yes, no, not done with Night's Queen. Last thing I want to point out is that she was beyond the wall, or if the wall didn't exist, she was at least in the far north. She just comes walking down out of the north like some sort of ice witch. So where does she come from? It's a big mystery. if she's a female other, then well, where do the others come from then? Like, it seems like she is potentially the origin of the others. It's like her and Night's Queen might be creating the first others. This is kind of what I think and what a lot of people think. But I just want to point out that it is an open mystery when you hear this story. Where did she come from and who is she? So we'll see if we can answer that as we put together more information about the others. Night's Queen is Adara from the Ice Dragon book. We're going to talk about the Ice Dragon and Adara near the end. But actually, I should mention that now, Ryan Vine. Thank you. The Ice Dragon is quasi-children's story that George wrote. It has an ice dragon in it. And the protagonist, the main character, is this little girl named Adara. And she is almost like an other. She has cold skin and blue eyes. And she rides the ice dragon when no one else can. So she's an icy girl. And it says that when her mother was pregnant, the cold stole into her womb somehow. So she came out cold, out of the womb cold, and grew up as a human. So the idea that Night's Queen is some sort of transformed human is something that people noticed in the Ice Dragon. Like, oh, George is thinking about transformed humans made of ice who might not even be evil. So there's some interesting stuff in the Ice Dragon. I definitely recommend everybody watch it. It's not set inside of the world of Ice and Fire, but it essentially sounds like it could be one of Old Nan's stories. It's talking about a more generic kingdom, but it is a kingdom of dragon riders. And there are 3 fire dragons who fight the Ice Dragon. And the farm that Adara is from sounds a lot like Winterfell. There's a lot of parallels. It basically, in my head canon, it's one of Old Nan's stories. Because it says that Old Nan told a lot of stories about the Ice Dragon. But they never say what those stories are. So to me, the Ice Dragon is one of Old Nan's stories. Where it sounds Ice and Fire-ish. But, yeah. So, in any case, we'll talk more about ice dragons later. Like the actual things. Do they exist? Okay, so now we're going for a little bit of cool symbolism. Shout out to Durandon from the Westeros forums. Hey girl, can I put you over on this tree here? That'd be cool. Oh, what's going on with this mic? Sorry guys, was my volume okay? My mic was doing something weird. Looks like it's all right. So this is Melisandre, Birth of a Shadow by Delisa Anya. Okay. And on the left is the normal image, and on the right, I just inverted it. The reason why I did this is because Durandon from the forums had this brilliant insight that Melisandre and Stannis are very much parallel to Night's King and Queen, but flipped with temperature. Temperature inverted. So, Night's King gives his seed and soul to Night's Queen, and they create others who are called White Shadows. So you give your seed and soul to an icy sorceress, and she can make white shadows with them. Stannis gives his life fires and his seed, of course. He sleeps with Melisandre. They have normal physical sex, but because Melisandre is a sorceress, her womb is magical. And so instead of a normal child, of course, she has the shadow baby, as we call it. It's basically just a big black shadow that's a copy of Stannis. It's a shadow clone of Stannis. So you can see the parallel here. It's like, oh, the White Shadows, they're clones of Night's King. If, sorceresses can take the seeds and life fires, because it's not just the pregnancy, it's not just Stannis' little swimmers. Mel says, oh, Stannis' life fires are burning low. I can't make another shadow baby. If I draw from his life fires, it might kill him. So making the shadow babies requires some of the life essence of the father. Happy Father's Day. So with Night's King, it's a similar story. He gives his seed and soul to Night's Queen, and then they make white shadows. So it's this great parallel, and this starts to give you more clues about who Night's Queen might have been. Well, because what is Melisandre? She's an ice sorceress. She is not dead. And I'll fight anybody about this. Some people think she's resurrected. She is not. We get a monologue from Melisandre. You get her POV, and she describes a transformation process. She talks about the fire being inside of her, searing her and transforming her when she uses the fire magic and has a vision. Searing and transforming. Then she says, pretty soon she won't need to sleep at all. She only sleeps like an hour a night. Soon she won't need to sleep at all. So that, again, a transformation process where over time, the more fire magic she used and the more she's seared and transformed, the less she has to sleep. She already does not eat. She only eats to keep up appearances. She doesn't need to. She gives that away in her monologue. Oh, I should eat. People get wigged out if you don't eat food. That's true, Melisandre. Has anybody seen Melisandre eat or poop or anything? No? So, yeah, we made jokes about, when she does eat, it just burns up inside, so she still doesn't need to poop. But, yeah, obviously she drinks the poison and transmutes it. That's because her physiology isn't normal. So she's not a fire wight. No. A fire wight is a dead thing that is resurrected. They do not have flowing blood. Their whole presence isn't there. Beric is hates being alive. Completely different from Melisandre. Melisandre is transformed by using fire magic. And she is in a state when we meet her in a dance with dragons and we get in her head. She doesn't need to eat anymore, and she only needs to sleep a little bit. And when she doesn't eat, she says she's sustained. R'hllor gives her all the energy she needs. So she is sustained by raw fire magic. And her body is not completely human anymore. Similarly, we see Moqorro is able to survive for 10 days floating around at sea, which is not possible. You can't drink seawater. He had nothing to drink. Maybe he caught flying fish and burnt them and ate them, but he's got nothing to drink for 10 days. So his ability to live implies that Moqorro is not naturally human either anymore. And of course, his skin to Tyrion looks burnt black and unnatural. It's not supposed to be like Tyrion being a racist or whatever. It's literally supposed to imply that Moqorro's skin looks burnt and charred, and his face tattoos seem to move around. That could be an illusion or not. So Melisandre's using a glamour as well, so we don't know what she really looks like. She might look more burnt or like a flame. I suspect she might look like Moqorro with pitch black burnt skin. And let me pull up the art since I'm just sort of vamping on this. We'll come back to the others. But Atlantis Morissette made this for me, and so I love to show it off. This is a photoshopping of Carice Van Houten's Mel as a burnt thing, as a fire other. And I've got a video called Fire Others that really explains this. But basically, it's simple logic. If Melisandre is becoming less human and more sustained by R'hllor, the more that she uses fire magic, she will get to the point eventually where she will only be fire. She will be a living flame. She will be a fire other. And so the parallel with Night's Queen starts to make a lot of sense. Who is Night's Queen? Well, she is some sort of sorceress who used ice magic and transformed herself to the point where she was made of ice, but still kind of human. So then Night's Queen, or Night's King, who may have been a sorcerer already, comes along, gives his seed and soul, Stannis-like, to this ice witch, and she starts popping out white shadows, just like Mel pops out black shadows. So, thank you, Atlantis Morissette. Atlantis Morissette, who designed the Garth emoji and the other Garth logos that I have, and we're working on a Garth t-shirt. It'll be out in a week or two, hopefully, for you to buy. We got a whole new t-shirt line coming out. Going to revamp that. The much-needed Garth the Green shirts are coming. Oh, yes. So on the show, we see that she's actually like super old underneath the glamour. And I do think her physical appearance is other than what it seems, but I don't think she'll be super old. I think it'll be more like Makoro, like a burnt thing, or like a living flame. So anyway, that's enough of that. Stannis also, not only does he sort of parallel Night's King just by giving the seed and soul, he is very Night's King-like. He takes the Night Fort for his seat. He doesn't go there yet, but he claims it as his seat, and the Night Fort is where Night's King ruled. Thank you for the Garth emoji booner. Stannis, the first time we see him, his face is covered in shadow. There's 3 different shadow lines that are descriptions that are applied to him. His eyes are as dark as a midnight sea, blue as a midnight sea. So there's all this night and shadow language applied to Stannis right from the beginning. Then he takes up the seat of the Night Fort. Night's King also like sort of took over the watch, right? And got and declared himself a king. Well, Stannis sort of does that too. He goes up to the Night's Watch and forces them to choose a Lord Commander and kind of bullies them into doing the things that he wants. Jon ends up helping him a little bit. So there's a lot of Night King parallels with Stannis. And then that just adds to the Melisandre Night's Queen parallels. Yeah, this is going well. I think we're moving at a better pace than the Great Empire of the Dawn Iceberg. So fire others are a thing, and we can't. So when the shirts are ready, you will be able to order them in the link in the description. Right now, it's a Teespring link. I'm going to move over to TeePublic, and I'll have the link in every video description, and I'll share it and all that shit. So don't worry. Okay. And let's see. So just to wrap all that up, if Night's Queen is a sorceress who tapped into ice magic and transformed herself, then she might be the origin of the others. That could be the case. So next we have Brandon the Breaker. And this is Jon, obviously. This is TV show fan art. But it gets close to the legend of Brandon the Breaker, which is simply that the brother of the Night's King, the man that threw down Night's King was his brother. And Night's King is suggested as a Stark also separately. So if his brother is a Stark, that all makes sense. So this starts to sound like a brother-brother fight. And we've got all kinds of brother-brother fights in the story. Stannis and Stannis and Renly. Bunch of Garths fight at the Craster's Keep. There's a bunch of stuff. Targaryens do it occasionally. Escape the city. So you're getting into the timeline heresy stuff. It is assumed that Night's King and Queen lived after the Long Night for 2 reasons. One, he's standing atop the wall when he sees her, so it sounds like the wall's built already. And it said he's the 13th man to lead the watch. And if we assume the Night's Watch was created at the beginning, during the Long Night, the 13th man to lead the watch would be like 100 or 200 years after the Long Night. However, I think that is wrong. I think that is just fog of myth. This is not written history. These are folk tales that are 8,000 years old. We should not take them as literal truth. I don't know why everyone is locked onto the 13th commander thing. It's like there's no other way to interpret it. The Night's Watch could have been created from a previous fighting force that had 12 Lord Commanders. 12 Lord Commanders may have died during the Long Night, fighting the others. Although I don't think that's the answer. I think it's the previous fighting force, and I'm actually going to give you my theory about that. But you're correct as far as what people think. Yes, they think Night's King and Queen are after the Long Night. I just think that is wrong. I'm a heretic. And I think the clues about it are spelled out in multiple ways. So we'll build to that. I've got several points about it. But it doesn't matter when. Brandon the Breaker is just supposed to be a Stark who took down Night's King. So this now sounds like a brother-brother thing. So, like, if Night's King is a Stark, do the Starks have the blood of the other? Like, Ned stands by the window and Cat's cold and Ned's not. So is he cold resistant? Like, the Targaryens are a little bit heat tolerant. The Starks are all winter is coming and their sword is named Ice. They kind of sound like cold dudes. They've got Brandon Ice Eyes Stark in their history and Edric Snowbeard Stark. So what's with that? You can definitely start to get there are more advanced theories about this. Like I said, we'll get there. But just reading the books on the first pass, a lot of people wonder, are the Starks like actually related to the others somehow? And the answer is yes. Those house words, winter is coming, it's like a promise, sounds like. So next, and I'll mention Brandon the Breaker. By the way, this art is by Mike Hallstein. And I'll mention Brandon the Breaker again a little bit later. But for now, that's all I'm going to say. Also, a clue about if Night's King lived during the Long Night, then what did Brandon the Breaker break? He broke the Long Night. He made dawn break, right? The break of dawn is when the sun rises. So Brandon the Breaker broke the hold of the Long Night on the earth. That's if he's the last, and that would make him the last hero as well, which kind of makes sense. The last hero should be a Stark. So Brandon the Breaker could be the last hero. Now, sort of a little bit of a topic change. We're going back to the nature of the others. They are, in many ways, Icy Elves. So, remember I said their language is like the cracking of ice on a winter lake? Well, the language of the children of the forest is described as like water over rocks in a babbling brook. So, if a babbling brook freezes, then it would sound like the others. It's nature speech. So maybe the others are some sort of frozen children of the forest, or made with children of the forest magic, or cousin species to the children. They both have nature speech, right? That's an old one that somebody caught. One of my finds is that when Sam kills another and he's talking to Cotter Pike is laughing and he's like, "Are you sure you killed another, not some child's snow knight?" Meaning like a snowman. A snow knight. In Westeros, you don't make a snowman, you make a snow knight if you're a kid. In the north. Some child's snow knight, though. Calling an other some child's snow knight implies that maybe the children made the others as snow knights. And that's what the TV show went with. I think the book reality is always going to be more complicated. But Children of the Forest magic seems like it was involved with the creation of the others, doesn't it? Josh Barker says, could Bran having satellite view be him seeing from the comet? Ravenous Reader likes to think so. Comets can be skin changed. That's probably how the original Long Night comet was called. Josh, that's very advanced theory, but that has always been a possibility. The two things that seem to try to break the moon or call comets are weirwood trees and horns. The horns always are doing things like that. Like I said, Hammerhorn Keep. So yeah, it's possible that we're talking about skin-changing comets. It's a little abstract for me, but if the comet has a Lovecraftian intelligence on it, maybe. I think this is stuff that George is probably softly implying, but not going to spell out. But we'll see. We'll see what Bran sees when the new Long Night falls. But Ravenous Reader loves that question, Josh Barker. Ravenous Reader, one of my oldest friends, contributed a lot of ideas to this body of stuff that we're talking about. So, shout out. Okay. Let's see here. Yeah, the key to skin changing a comet will be that the comet has intelligence to skin change. Not that we're skin changing rocks, but that the comet has Lovecraftian intelligence on it. The great others on the comet. Okay? That's what we're talking about. But again, I think this is just stuff that Martin wants to softly imply so that we can wonder about it, not something they're all going to be talking about. John and Danny, so there was an alien on the comet. Yep, that's what it was. That's probably not. Okay. We'll come back to aliens, though, a little bit later. So, Child Snow Knight. Then there's another line from Asha Greyjoy, and thank you for that super chat. Asha Greyjoy is fighting Stannis' Northmen at one of my favorite chapters, Wayward Bride. They're in the Wolf's Wood, and the Northmen have dressed up like trees. They are wearing pine boughs and stuff so that they are disguised as they move through the woods. And it causes Asha to reflect on the tale she heard about that time when the children of the forest turned the trees to warriors in their wars against the First Men. It's like, what? The children of the forest turned trees into warriors? That's weird. Are we talking about Ents here, or... Yeah, is this Macbeth? Yeah, is it the War of the... What's that called? It's definitely one of George's inspirations, the War of the Trees, or whatever it is. Yeah, so Elven Demon, we're gonna answer. That's what we're answering with this whole Iceberg stream. What do you think of the others actually having something deeper than not just blatantly evil? Oh, absolutely, there's something deeper to them, and we're getting real close to explaining that. So just hang tight. So yeah, the children of the forest might have turned the trees to warriors, and who are those? There's two possibilities. We're going to talk about resurrected Night's Watchmen in a minute. Coldhands is one. Jon will be one. Jon is a skin changer, but what if you did that with a green seer? That would be like Jon would die and his spirit, instead of going into his wolf, would go into the tree. Then you resurrect the body, pull the spirit back out of the tree. Now you have a tree zombie guy. That could be like the Night's Watch green zombies or something. But this is probably about the others who seem to come from the weirwoods. Like I said, the White Walkers of the wood shadow emerged from the dark of the wood. Children of the forest magic being used to create the others would basically explain that. They would be children's snow knights, and this would be the source of the legend about turning the trees into warriors. Yeah, we do have a lot of viewers today, by the way. Thank you. Almost to 600. That's kind of crazy. So glad we got this stream working. Glad the internet is holding tight. All right. We're going at a nice pace. I don't know if we're going to go for 6 hours. I feel like we're moving along a little faster. PayPal from Zoe. Almost doxed you. Zoe M. Thank you. Listening since 2016. And, okay, some inside talk and some thank yous. Hunter, what's up with Rick and Stark? Is George setting him up to be a warg king come again just to kill him off? Doesn't sit right with me. Well, I don't know that he's just going to be, when you say just kill him off, like a lot of people are going to die before the end of the story. If people do something cool before they die, that's kind of all you can hope for. I don't think that Shaggy Dog story thing is as much as it's made out to be. I do think he's going to show us an example of what a wild wolf warg king would look like. And I could definitely see him teaming up with Arya and the wolf pack. Maybe he'll end up inside of his wolf. And we'll know that like Shaggy Dog has Rickon inside him, and that'll be what it is. But is undoubtedly going to link back up with Arya and her story. So that's about all I can say on that for now. Okay, so next up is a compliment to the last slide, really. The Icy Aes Sidhe. This is another clue about the others being tree warriors or elves. And like it says here, big shout out to Quinn's Ideas. Quinn's Ideas back in the day when he used to make Ice and Fire videos. He doesn't really anymore. He's doing sci-fi stuff now. But one of his oldest videos was about the children of the forest and the others. And Karsnark, if I forget what it's called, but if you could find this one, that would be awesome. Might be like Origin of the Others or something like that. But it's one of Quinn's oldest videos. It's a great video, big influence on me. And he found a quote from George talking about the others. And he's like, oh, they're sort of inhuman, elegant, beautiful, strange. like Icy Aes Sidhe. And the Aes Sidhe are the people of the mounds. That's what it means. They're essentially spirits in Irish folklore. They're associated with mounds and graves and the woods. And there's different versions of how they act, but essentially they are standard fairy creatures. If you don't trouble them and don't violate their customs, it's probably not going to be a problem. But if you do the wrong things, they will be pissed. They might take your children. The main thing is that the Aes Sidhe are essentially elves. And so calling the others Icy Aes Sidhe strongly implies them as elven-like. That is essentially the crux of it. Yeah. Quinn's channel is awesome. I mean, check out all this. He's covering so much stuff right now. But, yeah. And then, of course, George is using the barrows in the Barrowlands a lot. So this whole, the Aes Sidhe being people of the mounds, he's not just, talking about it. He's actually using that idea. So the mounds in the Barrowlands are heavily associated with spirits. And the biggest mound, under Barrowton, is associated with the first king, who might be Garth the Green, the first king of the First Men. He might be a giant, and supposedly he's buried there. So this is another clue about the others, who are like the frozen people of the mounds, being related to elves, green men, children of the forest, because Garth the Green is obviously a green man, which we're going to talk about. So lots of clues that the others are elves in some sense. And now we come to Coldhands. What the bleep? He's a weirdo. What's going on here, right? He's very unique. He's an ice white. He's the only thing that's different about him and all the other frozen whites is that he does not have blue star eyes. They are dark black like a raven's eyes. And he is obviously not, he's in possession of himself. He talks and rides the elk and talks to Bran and decides to fight the others and circles back and kills the mutineers and cuts them up into steaks and comes back and tells the kids that it's pork. And he's a dude. He is a corpse that is in whose spirit has repossessed his own body. It's pretty similar to Beric or Stoneheart, who are also walking corpses. They're not reanimated, meaning restored to life and vitality. They're just, I guess reanimated is the word. They're not resurrected in the sense that they are living again. They are a dead thing that is moving by magical means. Okay? So there seems to be a way, and I believe all this is shadow binding. Beric, Stoneheart, Coldhands is all shadow binding, because we're taking somebody's spirit or ghost or shadow, whatever word you want to use. After they die, you're calling it back from the realm of the dead, and you're binding it to the corpse, which is animated with magic. And this is Diego Gisbert Lorenz again, I think, this artwork. Yes. I don't know if it's again, but this is Diego Gisbert Lorenz. This is some of my favorite Children of the Forest, too. Yeah, they look awesome. The elk is skinnier by the end, but elks are big. And we'll talk about the elk, too. But yeah, Coldhands appears to be a cold white who is not controlled by the others. So that is a big piece of information. It means that potentially somebody who's cold whited could be rescued. And the show did some fun stuff with Benjen and Dragonglass. Forget about that. They're vamping on stuff from the books is the point. Coldhands proves a cold white can be saved. Now, I think that this can only be done with a skin changer. Because Coldhands is definitely a skin changer. Absolutely 100%. Well, like 98%, but I'm pretty sure about it. So, the reasons why we know he's a skin changer. First of all, he's riding an elk, and it's a great elk. The Irish elk is what George is referring to. They are 10 feet tall at the shoulder. That is no lie. So if you look at the ceiling if you live in a normal house, ceilings are 8.5 feet. This elk is taller than your ceiling at the shoulder. Its rack of antlers, equally broad, 10 feet at the shoulder, or 10 feet across. So they're huge. They dwarf humans. Oh God, I'm going to get the pictures out. You guys know how I feel about the Irish elk stuff. This is not an animal you could ever ride without magic. Elks are literally symbols of untamable, wild virility. This is not an animal you can ride, especially a big one. But the green men are said to ride elks, and the green men are magical. So we know in Ice and Fire, you can ride elks with magic, and that the green men did this. And that's why Bran asks if Coldhands is a green man as soon as he hears he's riding elk. So this is the scale. Hang on. This is the scale. So here's a human 6 feet tall. Yeah, you're looking at like 8 at the shoulder and 10 at the top of the head. There's the rack of antlers that's 10 feet across. So it's bigger than your wingspan. Okay. And that's what you saw in this first picture. You see that? If that guy puts his arms out, that's about 6 feet. Those antlers are easily 10 feet wide. And they're not calling them antlers is a little deceptive, isn't it? Those look like dragon wings made out of bone. That's what I would call them. Now, think about how heavy those are. Think about an animal that can hold those on his head and run around and stuff. We're talking about neck muscles that you have never seen before. So here's the skeleton of one. So you can see, look at those shoulder blades. Look at that. Look how thick the neck vertebrae is. And all of those tall bones on the spine are going to be anchors for muscles and tendons. So it's a hugely muscular animal. Here is a recreation of one. So that person's probably about 5.5 feet. You can see how big the elk is. So when it says the elk, Coldhands and Sam and Gilly are all riding on it. That's how big it is. Okay. And this is all just fun, but I'm also pointing this out to say that you can't do this without magic. Elks can't be ridden without magic. But Coldhands being a skin changer, that makes sense. We see Varamir Sixskins riding a friggin' snow bear and, you know, like a polar bear. Again, you can't ride a polar bear without magic. But he does because he's got magic. Shadow cats. So Coldhands also talks to the ravens. He sends the ravens out. They spy for him. They whisper to him. He stops and listens and then gives information. Like, he's clearly talking to the ravens. This is another thing that the ancient green men and first men green seers were said to do, to speak with the ravens. Coldhands also speaks the old tongue. When the elk finally dies and he butchers it, he says a ritualistic prayer over it in the old tongue. And the only people that speak the old tongue that we've ever met are the Thens. And Magnar knows a little bit. Mance knows a little. So Coldhands knowing the old tongue, it's not something anyone in Westeros knows. He's probably centuries and centuries old. It says they killed him long ago. It's probably very long ago. He might be the last hero. He might be one of the last hero's dead companions. This is some people think he's one of Raven's teeth. I don't know if that's long ago. That's like 50 years. To me, when the children say long ago, they're talking centuries. But so Coldhands rides elks, talks to ravens. He is acting like a green man, but he's a zombie ranger. And that's because that might be sort of the same thing to some extent. This is green zombie theory, quote unquote. But like I said, Jon is a skin changer who is dead, is going to end up a resurrected skin changer. We have reason to believe that he will be a better zombie than Beric or Stoneheart because his spirit isn't just dissipating, it's storing in his wolf. It is merging with the wolf, but it's protected in a way that Beric and Stoneheart's spirits are not. So Coldhands being a skin changer and Jon being a skin changer, you start to see, okay, maybe we can make a better zombie if it's a skin changer because we can use the animal as a soul jar while we do the resurrection. Okay? So if Coldhands is an undead skin changer Night's Watch Ranger, and Jon is an undead skin changer Night's Watch Ranger, it starts making you think maybe this is a thing. Then you look at the Night's Watch oaths. They're basically oaths of the dead. You know, they won't do it. No pleasure, no women, no sex, no nothing, no children. I will live and die at my post. And then resurrect at my post. Dolorous said throws out so many clues about this. He's like, oh yeah, you know, pretty soon they'll say dying's not an excuse. You know, they say get up there and take the watch. Here's a spear. You know what I mean? So there's all this cool stuff about that. And I made 3 videos about it, the Sacred Order of Green Zombies. You can go look it up. But the point is, skin changer zombies are a thing. And it makes sense because you see Coldhands wandering around in the north. And what? He doesn't need to eat or sleep or stay warm. He doesn't come near the fire. Well, he can't. But he's not. Yeah, the 79 Sentinels are big clues about this too. I should probably talk about them. Now is a good time. But yeah, so zombies don't need to eat, sleep, or stay warm. So they're kind of ideal to take on the Lands of Always Winter. And that's why Coldhands might have been ranging the Lands of Always Winter for centuries and centuries. That's not something a human could do. But a reanimated zombie in possession of himself can. So Jon will soon be ideally cut out to journey north. Once he's undead, he might have fire magic inside him too. So we don't know how Coldhands was saved, by the way. Wow, that's a crazy super chat, Kyle. Thank you so much. I've seen those kinds of things dropped on other channels at time to time, but I don't know if I've ever gotten a super chat that big. Let's hear it for Kyle, supporting the program. Appreciate that, dude. Ice and fire changed my life. Well, that's how I feel too, man. I talk about that all the time. I put my heart into this because it's real connected to who I am and a lot of personal growth that I've gone through. And I think symbolism, mythology, folklore, and just storytelling in general, a big part of the point is personal transformation, learning to understand the world. As a kid, books are a great way to learn about things that you haven't experienced yet. Storytelling is all about personal growth and personal transformation. And so, yeah, I feel strongly about Ice and Fire too. So thank you, Kyle. Appreciate that, man. Very cool. And by the way, if you do send in a PayPal and you don't have a Discord invite, which I give to all my patrons and squishers, just let me know and I can send you a Discord invite link right through the PayPal as sort of like a thank you for the PayPal. So yeah. And and you can also find me on social media, on Twitter or Instagram at the Dragon LML. If you, like I said, if you're tight on money, can't afford it, if you've been a fan of the program, we'll give you a Discord link. Or if you've sent in any super chats or PayPals and want a link, then let me know and I'll give it to you. So it's private, but not like super exclusive. It's just to keep out the ruffians and a way to say thank you to people who support the program. But I'm not trying to keep anybody out. So if you're a fan of the program, I'll pretty much get you a link if you can't afford to do one of the paying options. All right, so we'll talk more about Green Zombie Theory, but that's the beginning of it. Oh, the 79 Sentinels. Okay. So the 79 Sentinels, they abandoned their post. So they got brought back to the wall. They dug little holes in the ice. They planted them just like seeds or trees, and they filled it up, and they're facing north, so they're manning their posts in death. So this is showing you the idea of dead rangers manning the wall. It's showing you they're kind of like green men or like trees because they're planted and they all have spears. So you got that tree trunk being planted in the hole. And also sentinel is a type of tree. So the 79 sentinels, 79 trees planted in the wall. So these are tree men planted in the wall. So it's pretty cool. It's a major symbol of undead rangers for sure. And I believe no, I don't want to get lost. Never mind. I was going to do a sidetrack. I'm going to table that. Okay, next is Jon Snow. Like I said, he is a skin changer zombie. I already mentioned that. This amazing artist by Ronsta Sesteo again. You can see Ghost's fiery eyes. You can almost see Jon's spirit going into Ghost, kind of coming out of his mouth and going into his wolf. So it's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. Jon is dead. His spirit is in his wolf. And at some point, we're going to put that Jon wolf spirit back into his body, and he'll be the wolf man. He'll be a skin changer zombie. Now, Jon is also an ice dragon in the sense that he is a Stark and a Targaryen, right? Or you could say he's a Targaryen that goes to the north and gets frozen. Remember, Bran has a vision where he sees Jon's body growing cold and hard as all memory of warmth fled from him. That's his cold body laying in the snow. Hey, girl, come here. So he is the blood of the dragon, but he is hidden. Hidden under the snow, hidden under the Stark name, hidden in the north, and now he's in a cold body. So if the Starks have the blood of the other, then he's really an ice dragon. But the point I'm making is that Jon is combining all the three major magics. Ice, fire, and green. He's already a skin changer, and Bran might help him resurrect, which will be another green component. We know he's a blood of the dragon. And if the Starks are the blood of the other, he's also the blood of the other. And then we have the question of his resurrection. We're going to get into the theory that the others will steal his body, but he could certainly be cold-whited if that happens. And he's got that dream where he's armored in ice. His blade burns red in his fist, but he's armored in black ice. So what is that? Is that a reference to Valyrian steel, perhaps? What are you trying to do, girl? You're doing that thing where you won't go anywhere. You got to choose. You got to, yeah, hi, good girl. You got to make your choices. Where was I? Combining all the magics. So how's he going to be resurrected? The others could animate his body, so he could end up frozen. And maybe that's what that armored in ice, but the blade burned red is about, where he's got a cold body like Coldhands, but some sort of inner fire that frees him from enchantment of the others. It's pretty easy to picture Jon as an ice and fire zombie, right? But he's also got green magic. So that's why he's RGB Azor Ahai, if you will. And we're going to talk more about the three magics in a second also. Real Bloodraven's body was stolen from time-traveling Bran. I'm not into those theories myself. The time-traveling Bran is interesting to me as far as him like messing with stuff, but I don't think Bloodraven is trying to steal Bran's body. I think Bloodraven, as a true Machiavellian, is concerned for the greater good as he sees it. And I think he's willing to spend Bran's innocence and childhood by turning him into a tree wizard, which is kind of hardcore to do to a 9 or 10, 11-year-old. But I don't think he's trying. Bloodraven's not trying to escape the Weirwood cave. No, that's kind of a dumb theory in my opinion. I shouldn't say that, but that's not the story. Like Bloodraven's he's been playing a bigger game than that his whole life. He's never just been about himself. He's always been fighting wars for the name of House Targaryen, and then he's been a green seer since before he came to the wall, it seems like. And then he's been sitting in the cave with the children for 50 years. So, no, he's not trying to get out. I really hate that theory. Now, I shouldn't say I hate it, because I do think that the Weirwood net needs to get out of the trees, but that's not Bloodraven. That's the entire hive mind. That's a different topic. So we'll get to that. So I guess I would say that the idea of Bloodraven stealing Bran's body is the like overly simplistic version of what I think is actually going to happen, where Bran is going to download the entire Weirwood net. But we'll get there. I'm going to praise Garth and hit the restroom back in 90 seconds. I don't care what time it is. I just got to go. All right, thanks, guys. Thanks for putting up with my tiny little musical interludes so I can stay fresh here on the mic, on the ones and twos, just the one, I guess it is. Okay, so where were we? RGB Azor High, Jon Snow. Yes, we'll come back to Jon, but he's definitely combining all the magics, and that does seem interesting. How did the Starks lose their Children of the Forest knowledge? Well, it's just been a long time, Kelly. And it can happen anytime. Like, Ned seems kind of skeptical of that stuff, whereas Lyanna probably had a little more faith in magic because it seems like she went along with Rhaegar's interpretation of prophecy, which he would have been mentioning Aegon's prophecy. I made a video, what Lyanna told Ned at the Tower of Joy. And I said that part of it would have been Aegon's prophecy that she's relating as a believer from Rhaegar, saying, look, Jon is potentially the prince that was promised, and you've got to keep him alive, and he might have to fight the others at the wall. So I think that Ned was pretty pissed off at Rhaegar and Lyanna for running off and doing what they did. He probably didn't understand it. He probably thought their reasoning of believing in prophecy was dumb or wrong, because by the time we see him in the Godswood, Cat mentions the others, and he's like, they're long dead. Others, so he doesn't seem like a big believer in magic. He's more of a practical dude. So I think that probably is a result of Lyanna and Rhaegar causing so much trouble by following prophecy. But then, that Night's Watchman comes down from the wall talking about the others, and he chopped his head off, but he probably might have been still thinking about that. And then when Jon wanted to go to the wall, one of the reasons why he was okay with that is in the back of his mind, he's like, well, I mean, just in case that crazy prophecy is true, I guess the wall's the right place for him, right? I mean, he's supposed to be the prince that was promised, fight the others. Send him the Night's Watch. Kind of makes sense. Keep him safe. Be around if, comet comes and prophecy's needed. But it seems like Ned's pretty skeptical. So, yeah, it's a good question, Kelly. Thanks for good timing on that one. But, yeah, it's just a matter of different people. Just like in our own world. Some people are interested in astrology and tarot reading and stuff. And other people are like, flim-flam. So. Booner, just wanted to say I've been following your channel for over a year. Was never not satisfied with your discussions. Cool, man. Thanks, dude. You've been sending in a couple good messages, so I appreciate that. Oh, we'll get to the reads. We'll get to the Marsh King. We'll get there. I think you're really going to like my Marsh King section, Kelly. So next up, we've got the Black Gate. This is another WTF, just like with Coldhands. Like, what the first time we see it is just like, what is this? It's a big face. Did I give you the artist on the last one? Yeah, okay. The artist here, so on top is Frej Ageli. Lower right is Carrie Barnett, and lower left is Ivson Wild. So the lower left is the Night Fort. That's the weirwood growing up through the kitchen floor. It actually does not have a face, even though there's a face on it there. It's a faceless one. And then, so the Black Gate, obviously, it's a big weirwood face that's also a cave mouth. They walk through it, it opens, and then they walk through and go through a tunnel, presumably to somewhere on the other side of the wall. It only opens when Sam says his Night's Watch oaths, except that he recites a much shorter version of the Night's Watch oaths, which only doesn't really have the stuff about taking no wives and all that stuff. It's really just got like the sword in the darkness, Lightbringer shit in there, horn that wakes the sleepers, realms of men. So it sort of clarifies. You can see, this was the original Night's Watch oath. Some of that other stuff was added later. The original oath is all about defending the realms of men with horns and lights and swords or whatever the fuck. So, demonetized. So that's interesting. The shorter oath. It shows how old this is. This is really old. One of the first things that people started wondering about this is, well, this is at the Night Fort. The Night King and Queen were sacrificing to the others. Does that mean they had to go and leave their babies north of the wall for the others to scoop up? So maybe they smuggled them out of this black gate, and that's where the baby Snows went. The baby Snows, the Snow being a bastard from the north, so the baby Snows are the babies given to the others. And the fact that the bastards are called Snows is kind of like a little bit of a wink that babies are given to the Snow up here. So there's another Night's Watch castle called Snowgate that is renamed Queensgate by Alysanne. And some people have taken that as extra wordplay clues about the Black Gate being a Snowgate through which Knights, Queens, baby Snows were passed. So it's a Queen's Gate and a Snowgate if the babies went through it. Bran is a child, a Stark child who goes through the Weirwood Tunnel. So maybe other Stark babies went through there. If Night's King was a Stark, then we're talking about his kids, right? So a few related ideas here, but you can definitely see how maybe this had something to do with that. And you can also, the Night Fort was active until 200 years ago. We'll get to that. But it could be that people have been sneaking babies through this gate for the entire existence of the Night Fort. And we're going to talk about this. Remember, I said it's not just Craster. There's wildlings on the frozen shore. And where did Craster learn? Maybe from White Tree. If the others like babies, then they probably always have liked babies. So maybe the Night's Watch has been feeding babies to the others at different times or all the time. These are not my ideas. These are fandom ideas. I have my own preference that's a little different. But these are definitely important to mention about this gate. And another thing we have is this is the only talking Weirwood face we've ever seen. So what the bleep is that about? Can the other Weirwoods talk? Do they have faces underground that talk and the ones above don't? Is it, are the ones above that are carved, are those done as a copy of the real faces that are 80 feet below the ground? Is there a face in Bloodraven's cave? Will Bloodraven turn into a tree face? Are there Weirwood thrones in the Stark crypts? I'm just throwing stuff out. But these are things you start wondering when you see this gate. And you also wonder, the Black Gate pre-wall, we're going to talk about that. I believe it is. Is this Black Gate a person? Did somebody have to be sacrificed to turn into this Black Gate? It actually does match the description of the Grey King. The Grey King was said to have lived for 1,000 years and 7 and to have grown pale and corpse-like. And Bran sees the Black Gate and is like, it looks dead. He's like, wait, no, not dead. As if somebody lived for 1,000 years and never died and just grew older and older. That's the Grey King. So think about the reason why I mentioned that is because the Grey King is implied as a green seer. And his story could be one of those myths that got moved around, or it's a copy of a different myth. So somewhere there could be a green seer that lived to be 1,000 years and turned into this, and maybe this is about the Black Gate. So maybe this is the last hero. Maybe this is somebody older than that. Or maybe it's just the tree face. Yeah, there could be a tree face in the crypts. I definitely think there could be. I think there are Weirwood thrones in the lowest levels of the crypts. Definitely. We need to do a Stark theory, Iceberg. I've got a lot of Stark ideas here, but there's some that didn't fit. So we'll leave the Black Gate alone for now. But it's very mysterious. It sure is. I really do wonder if... Because I think the Weirwood face carving is an abomination. It was only done after a certain point, like after the Long Night. And originally the Weirwoods would have been different. Maybe they had talking faces underground. But I've got more to say about the Night Fort, but it's on a different slide, so let's keep going. Oh, it's this slide. Okay. No, actually, it's... Okay, I've got several on this topic. In any case, so, like I said, maybe the Night's Watch has been giving babies to the others for a long time. Why would they be doing that? Well, if you sort of think this one out, you get back to the last hero and how we stopped the others the first time. They obviously weren't eradicated because they're still around. So somehow they were defeated, pushed back, beaten back, but not gone. And you're welcome, Gavin. So how did that happen? Was there a pact? Was there a truce? We see in Ice and Fire, anytime there's a pact, they always exchange hostages, which are royal children. Sometimes it's nicer and it's called fostering, but think of Theon, taken from his poor mother, Alanis Harlaw, who now looks like a corpse because she's a Night's Queen figure. But anyway, yeah, so truces and pacts often sealed with hostages and fosters. So if we made a pact with the others originally, maybe part of that pact was to supply them fosterlings, if you will. Babies. Baby Snows. And you might even be that Night's King and Last Hero are the same person. I don't subscribe to this theory, but it is compelling because maybe when it says Night's King was found to have been sacrificing to the others, well, maybe that's what the last hero had to do to make the pact, to get the others to take their clouds away from the sun or something. So this is an idea that maybe last hero gave babies to the others, and that was actually that was part of the solution. So it's like a very darkly heroic thing that was done. Sacrificing children. It's pretty messed up. Yeah, and marriages are also part of pacts and things like that too. So Night King sounds like a human. He's marrying Night's Queen. Maybe there's more human, maybe it's going the other way around too. Maybe an other woman is being given to House Stark or something like that. So I don't think that's what it is, but it's pretty dark. You could see it as a George thing. I just don't think sacrificing children is ever going to be part of a solution. I could be wrong. I could be thinking about that in overly moralistic terms, but that's my 2 cents on it. So now, Alysanne. I made a video called Alysanne at the Night Fort, Doomsday Prepping for the Long Night. And it's very interesting what Alysanne did. Her and Jaehaerys, they went in the north. They went to Winterfell, and then Alysanne flew on to Castle Black ahead of Jaehaerys. Something like that. She got up to the wall first and spent more time there. And she went to the Night Fort and saw it and had it shut down. And she paid using her own jewelry. She just took her own jewelry off her neck and out of her trunk and used the money to build the Night's Watch a new castle. Was Deep Lake. And then they renamed Snowgate Queensgate in her honor. So she was much loved by the Night's Watch, and her and Jaehaerys better funded and supplied the Watch as well as building them a new castle. So it seems like they're really supporting the Watch. That makes sense now that we know they had Aegon's prophecy in mind. This is almost something Aegon should have done, but he was busy. And then Maegor happened. And then the next time we have a responsible Targaryen king, they make 6 trips up to the north during their reign and do a lot of marriage arrangements and fortifying the Watch. And they're definitely preparing for the long night. Jaehaerys and Alysanne, there's no question with the whole Watch thing. But the trivia gets into the Night Fort. Why did she shut down the Night Fort? Could it be that she had some inkling that the Night Fort is a part of the strength of the others? It's where Night's King and Queen sacrificed to the others. Maybe she found out that Night's Watchmen had been giving babies to the others. Maybe she saw the Black Gate. Maybe she just was going on folklore. Maybe she had a dream. Targaryens are dragon dreamers. There's multiple ways that she could get a clue about it. But for one reason or the other, she shut down the Night Fort. And As soon as she got back from this trip to the north, it says that she went to Molestown and she heard all these tales from the battered women there, victims of sexual assault, basically the R word, which I've learned you can't say or you get demonetized. But you guys know the custom of the first night is super dark. The lords have the right to swoop in on the wedding night of anyone in their realm and get first. They get to sleep with the woman before the man does. I'll just say that they get to the first right, the first night, the right of the first night, and it's really dark and disgusting. And so Alysanne, the problem with it is like it creates all these unwanted babies. So if the Lord gets the woman pregnant, then the father is mad. He's like, I've been cuckolded. And he doesn't treat the kid well. He might abuse the woman and kick her out or blame her, beat her. We've heard all variations of this. So it creates broken families, and it's horrible. And it's basically a customized, again, the R word, but set into custom and made okay. So it's horrific. And so, yeah. And so it's this very oppressive custom. And she gets rid of it. She basically goes back and talks to Septon Barth and Jaehaerys, and she's like, this is crap. There's no defending this. The knights are supposed to protect women in the weak, and here we're letting the lords do this to these women. It's got to end. And so Septon Barth first agreed with her, and then they convinced Jaehaerys, which is kind of a knock against Jaehaerys that he had to be convinced. But Alysanne gets credit for getting this law changed. But there may be more to it. Here's why. These unwanted babies from this custom may have been a source of babies for the others, because the babies, if the father doesn't want it, it's not his kid. And it's like maybe they'll just leave it outside, throw it down a well, or leave it outside. This is something that was done with, kids with birth deformities and stuff like that. Tyrion talks about it, right? It's like, if I was poor, they might have just thrown me down a well. So getting rid of the night fort and getting rid of the first night custom might both be about cutting off the pipeline of baby supply to the others. And this is not really my theory. It's more an old forum theory that I sort of tried to put my spin on. But yeah, that's definitely an old notion that what Alysanne did at the night fort was intentional and all about the others, and that this may have pissed off the others. So the R word would be the more severe form of, assault. So Republican, no, it's not what I'm talking about. It's what the lords are doing. I don't know if you can't figure it out during the context. I mean, it's what the lords are doing to these women. So Alysanne shut that down, and this all may have been doomsday prepping. And just, again, for people who talk about the Targaryens, like, the Targaryens are not written as a monolith. Some of them are evil, some of them are very good. They are just like any other house. Most of the other houses in Westeros practice cousin incest at the least, too. So, yeah. The Valyrians are written to be basically a very cruel and, a slave empire. But the Targaryens are not. And Queen Alysanne, basically, Alysanne and Jaehaerys did more for Westeros than any two people that have ever lived besides the last hero. Let's put it that way. They, built roads. They improved the rights of the commoners. They got rid of this friggin' custom. They strengthened the watch. So they're pretty awesome. And also, I'll just add, we were talking about Queensgate and Snowgate maybe being clues about the baby Snows. Queen Alysanne herself is a Night's Queen parallel figure. Her eyes are blue. I forget what they're compared to, but they're ice blue. Her hair is snow white, especially later in her old age when she comes to the wall. Actually, no, I take that back. I don't know how old she is when she comes here. So she's got blue eyes and white hair, And the dragon she rides is basically one of the ice dragon ones. All the white and silver dragons are symbolic ice dragons, as it turns out. So there's a few other things, but yeah. It's interesting that a Night's Queen parallel figure shuts down the Night Fort and this custom. It's almost implying that, like, Night's Queen is a bit of a victim and wants to stop whatever's happening, which I think is potentially true. Okay, so next up we've got let me see if I got this PayPal. Hunter. Yeah, I did. I did get that one. Okay. Okay, so next up is the rise of the others, meaning what has caused the others to stir. And this art is by Jian Lee, one of my very favorite other artworks. I love the ice armor on this one and the ice sword and the eyes, the glowing eyes. I mean, it's all sick. It's sick. This is just great stuff. Here, girl. So Mance says the others have been stirring for a while, years. They've been fighting him for a while. Several years, it sounds like. So we know they've been active for a hot second. Not just this year. It's been a minute. They're stirring. They're harassing the wildlings. And they're also picking off the stragglers from Tormund's column too. So it could be like they're herding everyone south. The Night's Watch and the wildlings. That's essentially what it comes across as. One second. Look at the artwork here. Mix in some water with the caffeine. Kind of help it go down there. Ugh. As a reminder, drink water, everyone. I don't drink nearly enough water. Most people don't. Okay. It's good. Kelly Johnson. The show Others. Book Others are beautiful. Yeah, the show Others are kind of hideous. I kind of like them for their own sake. Like they look cool by the time they get to season 5 or whatever, but they don't look like the book Others. So, and you guys can see that in the art. So, Clea, what's wrong, girl? Come here. Come step up, pretty. Come step. You can't climb on the computer though. That's not an option. So, Mance, okay. The Watchers. Okay, so they are called Watchers several times in that prologue, and I think another time again later. Their star eyes also imply them as Watchers. You know, like they're looking at the stars or something like that. So what are they watching for? You know, the Watchers is also a name that is associated with the Nephilim, which are like bad angels that come down and sleep with human beings and create giants and stuff. It's pretty cool mythology. Azathoth and Samael and some other people whose names, what's his name? Robert Jordan used for some of his, the Forsaken or whatever they are. A lot of those names are drawn from the Nephilim. In any case, calling the others Watchers And giving them star eyes kind of implies them as dark angels, star beings, something like that. It's kind of thematic. It's not too specific, but definitely the Watchers is just a phrase that jumps out. Maybe just George thought it sounded cool, but he could be implying that they have some, connection to the stars or the heavens or something like that. And obviously the star eyes are ubiquitous. Now, TPTWPTTO, that's the prince that was promised to the others. That's the name of one of my videos. But I think the answer of what got the others moving is Jon's birth. Or even Jon and Dany's birth, if you want to say. But it's really Jon's birth. Because if the Starks have the blood of the other, which I'm going to lay out the case for in a minute, then it could be that they are owed a baby from the Starks. And that Jon's destiny is somehow to be given to the others, or to lead the others, or something. I mean, his name is Jon Snow, which I've always point out is just another name for Jack Frost. Jon, Jack, Snow, Frost, and Jack Frost is literally the embodiment of winter. He is just ice given form. So, yeah, Jon Snow's destiny is obviously tied to the others in some way. And it may be, as I showed in that video, it's strongly implied that the others are his long-lost brothers and that the others want Jon in some sense. It's still a little unclear to me. Can you please explain the difference between how the show selected the whites / Watchers versus the books? I'm not sure exactly what you're asking. In both the books and the show, we have whites and others. They say White Walkers. White Walkers and others are the same thing. Those are the ice demons, and the whites are just the undead. So there's really not much difference as far as the classifications go. It works pretty much the same way. It's just that there's more to the others, But the whites are basically the same. The show whites are pretty book accurate for the most part. If I'm not quite answering your question, Carver, then feel free to rephrase it. But yeah. So the next slide we'll get into this. So this is A New Night's King. This is one of my this is one where I'm taking an old fandom theory and expanding on it. The idea that the core idea here is that the others are looking for a leader, and that the thing that they were doing with Waymar was a test, and that they were looking for Jon Snow, and were testing Waymar to see if he was Jon Snow, meaning the prince that was promised. Waymar looks like Jon. He even wears moleskin gloves like Jon. He is distantly related to the Starks, and he is from an ancient First Man house, Royce. And he's about the same age. So they saw this Night's Watchman who kind of fit the bill. And remember, it seems like they were spying on them as they went through the woods. And this would be the reason. They were sizing up Waymar to see if, not Waymar, sorry. Yeah, Waymar Royce, to see if he was Jon. And this is why the duel. They didn't just kill him. They tested him. They exchanged blows for a long time. And the swords were clanging and making all kinds of crazy keening sounds. And then, all of a sudden, Waymar slips up. And a little bit too late, and the other strikes him, and he starts bleeding. And then everything changes. Everything changes. The others laugh at him, and they move in, and they, not quite. They don't move in quite. The next thing that happens is he raises his sword on high. It glimmers with light. The other looks at Waymar's sword and sees that it's covered in frost. And then they laugh. And the next blow is the one where it says the other's parry was almost lazy, meaning it's just a little casual deflection. And it shatters Waymar's sword into smithereens. 1,000 shards, one of which, of course, gets Waymar in the eye. So it seems to me, a couple things here that we can extrapolate. One is that the others chose when to break his sword. It wasn't an accumulation of hits because he got tons and tons of hits and it didn't crack or chip at all. And then a lazy parry, the weakest blow that we in the whole fight, makes the sword explode. And we see it got covered with frost. So there's a magical, it's like the other froze it and then broke it. And he decided when to do that. And he did it after Waymar failed the test, after he started bleeding. Because it could be that by the time the prince that was promised is supposed to make it to the others, he's supposed to be undead. And so if Waymar bleeds and they're like, you're immortal, you're not what we're looking for. And so they dispatched him. Or it could be that he didn't have the right sword, because they did look at his sword and saw that it was covered in frost. If that had been a Valyrian steel sword or Dawn, it might have been lighting up with fire instead or resisting the frost, and then they would have been afraid. But instead they were like, there, he's not a threat. We'll take him out. So there's some sort of testing. I'm guessing a little bit about what they were looking for, but clearly it's written in a way that we're supposed to think about the ins and outs of all this exchange here. And so the bottom line is, if they killed Waymar casually once he failed the test, what was the other option? Meaning, if he had passed the test, maybe if he had slew one of the others, or if his sword had lit up on fire and he had broke the other's ice sword, or if he had been struck by the other's blade but not been phased. There's a few ways, excuse me, getting squeaky. There's a few ways that Waymar could have passed the test. And I'm mostly speculating along the lines of what Jon's going to look like by the time the others confront him. You know, he might have a flaming sword. He might be undead. He has the blood of the dragon. He might have fire, lore blood by that time. Okay? So, bottom line, if they dispatched Waymar for failing the test, that implies they had some other plan for him if he passed the test. And what was that other plan? The other plan would be to turn him into a new Night's King. Hello, devoted to Mariah. Good to see you. And I apologize if I've not been looking at the chat a ton. It's been, it's a lot going on over here. So, all right. So, let's see. Where were we? Oh, are you hungry, girl? Okay, come here. She's telling me she's hungry. Come here, girl. Come here. Basically, if they killed him when he failed the test, they wanted to possess him. That's what they would have done. If he was the right person, they probably would have wanted to possess him. Okay? So, and I'll get you in a second, Carver. And if they want to possess a human being, why do they want to do that? This seems different than the babies that they take from Craster. They want to possess an adult. So, again, I'm saying that they're looking for a new Night's King, and that person has to be a Stark because they have the blood of the other, and this is some sort of destiny, some sort of pact that must be concluded. So going back, Carver is clarifying, the book fan art always depicts the whites and the others as misty and ethereal, but the show depicted them as more solid. Oh, well, I mean, when you say accurate, they each are their own canon. So the book, the show others are the show others. We mostly are talking about the books here. So when you say accurate, you know, the show others are not book accurate, but they're just different canons. So, you know, we're talking about the books here exclusively. I'm only occasionally bringing up the show as a comparison point, but all this is book canon. So yeah, all this ethereal, beautiful, that's how the others are supposed to look. They're not ugly. They don't look like skeletons. They have milk glass skeletons underneath of their white, icy flesh, and they wear mirror armor. So yeah, go by the art that you're seeing here. Oh shit, I was muted. And the chat wasn't key. Oh fuck. Oh man. How long was that? That was, I estimate 90 seconds. Okay, I got you. Don't worry. I was cooking. I was. You knew we weren't going to get through a whole Iceberg stream without a mute. Okay, I got to collect my thoughts. So I was responding to 2 super chats. Sorry, guys. The first one, I was just simply saying that this was less interesting. Just that, book and show canon are different about White Walkers. So on the show, the White Walkers look like skeletons and they're ugly. All this fan art is book accurate. Okay. So yes, in the books, they look ethereal and beautiful. And they're just different ways that they took them. This one was the one I was answering. Are the others looking for Targaryen blood? I said I was locking in on the idea that Jon is blood of the other, and that's why the others want him. But they also might want him because he's a Targaryen, or for both reasons. Because it's also implied that the others want Dany. The House of the Undying shows us cold blue shadows trying to possess Dany. They're biting and sucking at her like they want to suck her magic. And they're parallels to the others. They're cold blue shadows gathered around a cold heart, like the heart of winter. So maybe the others want Jon and Dany, who are both the prince that was promised and Azor High Reborn. Maybe they want to steal that prophecy, or maybe they have their own prophecy, I was saying. Carver, what do we... Okay. Come here, girl. Let's explain. You're asking what the others look like, according to the book. It's the art. It's this fan art. So I showed you the one that George said was the most book accurate other. That was John Picacio. That's this one. Let me drag it up to the top. This is what George has said the others look like. So you can see here, they're partially insubstantial. The 2 in the back look just like white shadows. They're shadows, they're blurry, kind of fuming a little bit. Like something that's so cold that's like frosting. That's why they're always the pale mist that are trailing them. It's like they're so cold that they're condensing the air. Condensing. That's not quite the right word. Condensation is happening. What is it when you go straight from, it doesn't matter. They have cold mist that are trailing them. That's what I'm trying to say. So this is what it is. Their ice armor is reflective. It's mirror-like. So it reflects the trees and the snow. Their hands are bone white, and their skin is bone white and milk white. So they have white flesh, and they have milk glass bones underneath. Is Grey Waste Tim in the house? Nice. And yeah, they don't break the snow, and they seem kind of misty. So it seems like they can turn solid and not. And I'm actually going to talk about that later in the stream. So if you just hang tight, Carver, I will get as detailed as I can about their physical form. I will also give you a sneak peek of some other art. Where's that one? So this is the Visitor's other artwork that makes them look like aliens. But this artwork also shows, you see how they're reflecting the trees? Like their armor is mirror-like. It's like a frozen pond surface. So the reflections ripple and reflect. And that's what this art shows you. Okay, hang on a second. And also this one here is pretty good too. Like that's a pretty book accurate other. So I've answered your question for now, but I will expand on it later as we go, just so I can keep the ideas somewhat in order. Sublimation. Thank you. Sublimation. That's what I was looking for. Boom. Like sublime. Okay. So they're looking for a new Night's King. I think they're looking for Jon. And maybe they want Jon and Dany. But maybe they'll get Euron. Because Euron is also heavily foreshadowed to be Night's King. It's almost too much to even start to go into. He's obviously an apocalyptic figure, you know, who wants to take power during the new long night. And he's talking about the comet and the dead gods and all this other crap. But there's a lot of symbolism that implies him as a Night's King. He's got the one blue eye, just like Waymar does. And that's a big clue. So I did skip over the something about Waymar. Okay. So as you know, Bloodraven has one eye. And this is derived from Odin of Norse mythology. Odin being a tree wizard who uses Yggdrasil, much like the Green Seers use the weirwoods, or kind of like that. And Odin sacrifices one of his eyes to drink from the Well of Mimir and gain magic. And the Well of Mimir is under Yggdrasil. So underneath the weirwood, we see Bloodraven with one eye doing tree magic. It just tells you he's Odin. Okay. So one eye is a symbol of magic user, if you want to say that. So Beric has one eye, and he's reanimated. He's like a reanimated Azor Ahai with his flaming sword. So when Waymar gets resurrected as a white, but with only one blue eye, it's kind of like a symbol that he represents something more than just a white, right? He represents the idea of an ice wizard, the opposite of a blood raven, an icy blood raven. So this is kind of part of the thing. It's like, even though Waymar failed the test, George is showing us through symbolism what the others want to make, which is a blue-eyed wizard, okay? A new Night's King, a new sorcerer, a new leader of the others, because they don't have a leader of the others. Like we were talking earlier, there is no leader of the others in the books yet. But I do think they're looking for one, and that it'll either be Jon or Euron, because there's really no other candidates. But with Euron, the ideas are a little different. Euron seems like somebody who is meddling with things beyond his understanding. And so, you know, people like Grey Waste Tim, more schooled in Lovecraft. In Lovecraft, sometimes there's alien entities and gods that take over people's minds and body snatch people or drive people crazy. So Euron, as he messes with magic, he might get, you know, mind snatched by the Great Other or whatever is out there animating the others. And then the other thing about it is that, you know, the others might not be the only ones that can use ice magic. So maybe Euron even thinks that he's going to tap into ice magic and take over the others or the whites consciously. I think he'll end up being a dupe if it ends up happening for him. But it could be that he's going to intend to try to use the long night to his advantage. He's that crazy. So it could be. So he's got the one blue eye symbolism. Jon similarly has one eye that is not missing, but he's cut. He's got that scar across one eye. So he's got one-eyed symbolism, and he could end up with blue eyes if his body is stolen by the others. So the nature of magic, and this is direct segue, something I observed after thinking about this story for a long time, is that magic does not seem to be as defined as people think it is. Okay, so the R'hllor are the fire magicians in the books. But Valyria also used fire magic. All of their magic is based on blood and fire. But they weren't R'hllorists. So what does that tell you? It tells you that fire magic exists on its own. Fire is a source of magic or a conduit of magic, one or the other. And multiple people, from Valyrians to R'hllor, can use it. The R'hllor just built a religion around it. And the Valyrians used it to fuel their dragon culture. But somebody in the Grey Waste might start looking in the flames and learn how to use fire too. There's no monopolies on magic. Okay? So we have to look at the Faceless Men. They seem to be collecting all different kinds of magic. We don't know what their deal is. That's just a whole who knows what. They just seem to be utilitarian about it. So we have to assume that ice magic is the same way, and that the others don't have a monopoly on ice magic. And in fact, if you think about it, all the magic is nature magic. Fire is a natural element, and ice is just frozen water. So really, this is all nature magic. It seems like the elements are sources of magic in this world. The trees are magical. The ice is magical. The volcanoes are sources of magic. Okay? So the way I've described it is there's one highway, and you can get on the highway with different on-ramps, different kinds of magic. But like Melisandre looks into her flames, and she sees Bloodraven and Bran, who are ostensibly connected to the astral plane through the weirwoods. But they can see each other. And the ghost of Highheart, who's using weirwood magic, foresees all kinds of stuff. The Red Wedding is seen by the ghost of Highheart and Patchface and the House of the Undying. So, major psychic events, they all seem to be connected. It's the psychic superhighway, and you can get on it from any kind of magic. That's what it seems. Also, Melisandre goes to the wall, calls it a hinge of the world, and says her fire magic will be stronger there, even though the wall's made of ice. So it seems like a hinge of the world can work both ways. Because somewhere at the root of all this, all magic is the same. It's got to be. Or has a common source. So the nature of magic is that it is nature magic. And I will further add that it could be this all comes from the children of the forest and the weirwoods. And that ice and fire magic are just side branches. Again, they are nature magics, just like the children seem to be, exclusively nature-based magicians. So when we talk about the others being kind of like children or green men, and then the other day we talked about, obviously, there could be links between skin-changing, green-seeing, and the dragon bond. So it really could be that, ice and fire magic, really it's all connected to the green magic. Like, where did that Night's Queen sorceress come from? Where did she tap into ice magic? Somewhere in the north. Was she a child of the forest? Did she learn from them? Oh, I think that's the next slide. No, Bran the Builder's next. Hang on. We'll get to Night's Queen in a minute. Or back to Night's Queen, I should say. So who was Bran the Builder then? If he supposedly built the wall, and the wall's built out of ice and built out of magic, well, it seems like an ice wizard built the wall. But if that wasn't the others, was there a different ice wizard? Was there somebody else who could use ice magic who wasn't the others? And who would that be? It would have to be Bran the Builder, wouldn't it? He's the one who built the wall after all. And it says that he was taken to a secret place to learn the language of the children of the forest, which means the children of the forest taught him magic. Did they teach him how to use ice magic? Was that necessary to fight the others? Was Bran the Builder partly other, and was he rescued? Was he, one of those Starks that is part other, but he's on the good side, and so his other bloodline allows him to work with ice magic? There's a couple different ideas here. But again, if the Starks have the blood of the other, then that makes it even more likely that they're ice magicians, but they might be able to be ice magicians even without that. So Bran the Builder could be an ice wizard without having any connection to the others, because magic is not a monopoly. Or he could be having a tie to the others, either one. But he could be an ice wizard. Now, Behold his mighty works and tremble. The thing is, he didn't just build the wall. Bran the Builder is also associated with Storm's End, the High Tower, and of course, Winterfell. Now, Winterfell, that's easy. You can see Winterfell on the bottom. By the way, the top art is Chase Stone, and the below art is Christy Belanescu. And this art is by Cheesecloth. So here you can see the Godswood at Winterfell. Bran the Builder supposedly built Winterfell around the weirwood tree. And so that doesn't have anything to do with ice magic, but it could be a weirwood thing. Storm's End has a weirwood and was probably built around the weirwood. So it's hard to say why Bran the Builder is associated with all those things. You know, it's openly suggested that we're not talking about one Bran, but just Starks. You know, multiple Brandons. Maybe that's just what their house was good at. There's also the idea that the Great Empire of the Dawn, who were the advanced stonemasons who might have been in Westeros in ancient day, maybe they trained a few people how to build cool stuff, and that's Bran the Builder. Storm's End is kind of weird, though, because during God's Grief sounds like a green man, is said to have received help from the children, or maybe Bran the Builder, or maybe the children taught him how to shape the stones with magic. Shaping the stones with magic that's fire magic. That's Valyrian fused stone. So is this tale just mixed up? Or do the children know something about fire magic and how to use it? It's an open question. It's hard to answer, but I just did want to mention it. So the main thing is that if he built the wall, then he must have been an ice wizard to some extent. Somebody was. And who else if not Bran the Builder? Then we have Brandon of the Bloody Blade. Okay, I need to give the birds a snack. I'm going to give Goose a snack and Cleo. She's hungry. And I'm going to play the music. And I'll be right back, folks. And we're back. All right. Thanks for being patient, guys. Only lost 2 viewers. That's pretty hot. Okay, so Brandon of the Bloody Blade. We've got a map. Snake versus Crane. Crane style. Shh. Brandon of the Bloody Blade is a son of Garth the Green, who had many notable children, of course. But he is supposedly also an ancestor of the Starks. So this is very interesting. This is... Of course, the first men seem to have arrived in Westeros in the south first, whether you're talking about the Green Men under Garth the Green and the first men going across the Arm of Dorne, or even the Great Empire of the Dawn landing in Old Town and on the west coast of Westeros, the ancient mariners that landed at Old Town or wherever, maybe the Ironborn who came across the Sunset Sea. All the first men are in the south, and the Starks eventually get to the north. So at some point, the Starks must have been in the south, right? Well, that's Brandon of the Bloody Blade. He's a son of Garth the Green, and he was said to have killed so many children at Red Lake, or at Blue Lake, that it was renamed Red Lake. And you can see Red Lake right here. It's above the grapes. You can see my mouse moving around. It's in the Reach here, and you can see Highgarden. Highgarden is like Garth the Green Central. That's where his firstborn son planted the oak, or it's where Garth planted the oaken seat and 3 weirwoods in the Godswood. And then his sons ruled there as the Green Kings. So Red Lake is, all his children are kind of around the reach. Like Golden Grove, that's John the Oak, or Old Oak is. Golden Grove is Gold Tree, whatever her name is. Anyways, his sons are all, his children are all the houses of the reach there. So Red Lake is the seat of House Crane. And House Crane is a skin changer house, supposedly. So we've got Brandon of the Bloody Blade, an ancient Stark, killing children of the forest. And in the same place, a different daughter of Garth, Rose of Red Lake, she founds House Crane. Okay? Now, this is all clever symbolism. First of all, the Bloody Blade. Barbary Dustin in the Winterfell Crypts. When Barbary Dustin is talking to Theon about Brandon Stark, Eddard's brother, taking her virginity, she repeatedly uses this metaphor of the bloody blade and how Brandon loved to hone his blade, and the sight of blood on his on his cockatiel was the same as the blood on his blade, and he loved it both, and he loved to use his blade. And it's really, it's not cryptic, okay? The bloody blade is a sexual metaphor. So when it says Brandon of the Bloody Blade, literally named after Brandon Stark, about whom Barbary is talking, when it says Brandon of the Bloody Blade killed children of the forest with his bloody blade, it may also be talking about him loving children of the forest, breeding with children of the forest. And then again, in the same area, we have Rose of Red Lake, a skin changer house. So it fits together a little bit. Now, Red Lake used to be called Blue Lake. So Rose was originally Rose of Blue Lake. Blue roses. Oh, that's a Stark symbol, isn't it? So Blue Rose is right there where Brandon of the Bloody Blade was bloodying his blade on children of the forest. So it sounds like this actually is all connected, and that Brandon and Rose may have married or had children together, or maybe they both are just breeding with children of the forest and creating first man skin changer houses. But here's the thing. Garth the Green is a green man, and the green men are probably green seers. We don't know if they're literally therianthropic antler men. I certainly hope they are. But they are certainly green seers of some kind. And so if all the first men houses are founded by children of Garth the Green, then it's kind of implying that all the first men houses are founded by green men, or that the early first men were all green men, or the heads of their houses were green men. Something like that is true. So it may not even be that any of these people need to interbreed with children of the forest. They may already be skin changers by virtue of being the children of green men, either hybrid human green men, or, again, we don't know what green men is, but the point is, it is implied that all the early first men houses descend from green men, and they have skin changer powers. So the idea that they all had to marry children in order to get those skin changer powers probably isn't even right. They probably got them more from green men. That's why only the Cranog men are short. Because if the Cranog men are short from marrying children of the forest, why isn't everyone else? The Starks are big. The old Starks are huge. You know, Bran's, they're big, scary men. So, now Brandon the Builder, he might be a child of the forest hybrid, because he is often described as a child. Like the Durin God's Grief story says, a child that would grow up to be Brandon the Builder. Well, maybe Brandon the Builder was just really short because he was half child of the forest. That's definitely a possibility. And that would fit with him being an ice wizard and somebody that maybe Brandon the Builder or maybe Children of the Forest helped Durin God's Grief. Maybe that's the same thing. There's also lots of Children of the Forest involved at Old Town, where Bran the Builder supposedly helped Uthor build the High Tower. Uthor Hightower is suggested as descended from the mariners across the sea, i.e. the Great Empire of the Dawn, and it's suggested that those mariners came to Old Town to learn the magic of the Children of the Forest. Uthor Hightower married the daughter of Garth, Maris the Most Fair. So if Uther Hightower is a great Empire of the Dawn immigrant, he's taking to wife a daughter of a green man. So you can see all this intermarriage between green men and the first men and maybe great Empire of the Dawn people. And that's where these houses are being created from. Okay, this is weird. Sorry, I didn't know this was still going. I'm going to cut this off, and we're going to finish this tomorrow. How many people are still on this thing?